IQAC और DBT उदय प्रताप कॉलेज वाराणसी की तरफ से आयोजित इस वर्कशॉप में आप सभी का स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन है। सबसे पहले मैं कॉलेज के मुखिया और प्राचार्य डॉक्टर धर्मेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी का स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं। मैं अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं कॉलेज के सेंटर सुपरिटेंडेंट डॉक्टर नरेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी का। इस आयोजन समिति की तरफ से ऑर्गेनाइजिंग सेक्रेटरी के रूप में मैं स्वागत करना चाहता हूं IQAC के कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर NP सिंह जी का और DBT के इंचार्ज डॉक्टर तुमुल सिंह जी का मैं स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं। इस समय हमारे फर्स्ट सेशन के रिसोर्स पर्सन डॉक्टर धीरज नायक सर जुड़े हुए हैं, मैं उनका भी स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करता हूं। एक्चुअली किसी भी वर्कशॉप का उद्देश्य होता है कि जिस विषय पर वर्कशॉप किया जा रहा है उससे संबंधित इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करी जाए, ट्रेनिंग दिया जाए और उस ट्रेनिंग के बाद उस विषय से संबंधित जो भी प्रॉब्लम्स हों उसको सॉल्व करने में मदद मिले। इसी उद्देश्य को लेकर इस वर्कशॉप का आयोजन किया गया है और हमारे प्राचार्य हर कदम उस दिशा में सोचते हैं कि महाविद्यालय किन ऊंचाइयों पर पहुंचे, कौन कौन सी एकेडमिक एक्टिविटीज हों जिससे कॉलेज का डेवलपमेंट हो और उस दिशा में उनकी प्रेरणा से इस तरीके के आयोजन हमेशा किए जाते हैं। आज का जो वर्कशॉप है फैकल्टी डेवलपमेंट वर्कशॉप ऑन रिसर्च एंड इनोवेशन, इसमें कई चीजें कवर की जाएंगी। जो वर्कशॉप है उसका फॉर्मेट क्या है, उससे संबंधित जो हमारे रिसोर्स पर्सन हैं, ऑनरेबल रिसोर्स पर्सन्स हैं, उनके बारे में जानकारी दें। इसके पहले औपचारिक शुरुआत के लिए मैं अपने आदरणीय प्राचार्य जी से निवेदन करना चाहता हूं कि वो पूज्य राजर्षि जी पर माल्यार्पण कर स्वागत एवं अभिनंदन करें और आशीर्वाद प्राप्त करें। डॉक्टर धर्मेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी, प्राचार्य उदय प्रताप कॉलेज वाराणसी। मंचस्थ अतिथियों से भी अनुरोध है कि वो इस प्रक्रिया में सहयोग प्रदान करें। प्राचार्य जी पूज्य राजर्षि जी का माल्यार्पण कर आशीर्वाद प्राप्त करते हुए सेंटर सुपरिटेंडेंट डॉक्टर नरेंद्र कुमार जी, IQAC इंचार्ज कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर NP सिंह जी, DBT इंचार्ज डॉक्टर तुमुल सिंह जी, धन्यवाद। अब मैं अनुरोध करना चाहता हूं कि दीप प्रज्वलन कर औपचारिक शुरुआत की जाए वर्कशॉप की। प्राचार्य जी द्वारा दीप प्रज्वलन किया जाए और अन्य अतिथियों द्वारा इस कार्य में सहयोग प्रदान किया जाए। दीप प्रज्वलित कर कार्यशाला का औपचारिक शुरुआत करते हुए प्राचार्य जी। धन्यवाद प्राचार्य जी। आप सभी लोगों का धन्यवाद। कोई भी कार्यक्रम किया जाए, उस कार्यक्रम में उस संस्था के मुखिया द्वारा एक आशीर्वाद और दिशा निर्देश प्राप्त करना बहुत ही आवश्यक हो जाता है और वही प्रेरणा प्रदान करता है पूरे कार्यक्रम के दौरान। मैं निवेदन करना चाहता हूं अपने प्राचार्य जी डॉक्टर धर्मेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी से कि वो इस कार्यशाला के बारे में और कार्यशाला के सफल आयोजन के बारे में, आयोजन सफल हो इसके बारे में 2 शब्द प्रदान करें हम लोगों को। उद्बोधन के लिए मैं आमंत्रित करना चाहता हूं प्राचार्य डॉक्टर धर्मेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी का। प्राचार्य जी।
इस एक दिवसीय फैकल्टी डेवलपमेंट वर्कशॉप में सभी प्रतिभागियों और आयोजकों का हृदय से स्वागत है। इस वर्कशॉप के बारे में मेरा ये कहना है, इसमें जो एक लेक्चर प्रोफेसर एस लखोटिया सर का होना है। जब मैं इंटरमीडिएट में पढ़ता था उस समय दैनिक जागरण में, मैं गाजीपुर जनपद के एक छोटे से कस्बे से मैं आता हूँ, वहाँ पे अखबार पढ़ने के लिए भी हम लोगों को वहाँ पे आना पड़ता था। कस्बे में अखबार मिलता था। ये 1989 की घटना है और उस समय अखबार में शांति स्वरूप भटनागर अवार्डी के रूप में एक खबर छपी थी कि प्रोफेसर एस लखोटिया सर को शांति स्वरूप भटनागर अवार्ड मिला है। उसके बाद 1990 में हमने बीएचयू में बीएससी ऑनर्स में एडमिशन लिया था और उस समय भी लखोटिया सर के बारे में बहुत कुछ सुना था। कई कार्यक्रम वहाँ पे बीएससी स्नातक शिक्षा के दौरान कई ऐसे कार्यक्रम थे जिसमें उनको सुनने का मौका मिला। तो इस प्रकार आज सीधे सीधे हमारी जो अपनी उदय प्रताप कॉलेज की फैकल्टी है उसको, और साथ ही जो अन्य लोग वर्कशॉप में जुड़े हुए हैं उनको प्रोफेसर एस लखोटिया सर को सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। और मैं अपने छात्र जीवन को याद करता हूं कि उस समय भी कई बार एस लखोटिया सर को सुनने का मौका मिला था। आज फिर जो है एस लखोटिया सर को सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। साथ ही भारतेंदु कुमार जो कि प्रोफेसर फिजिक्स के हैं बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी, उनको इस फैकल्टी डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम में सुनने का मौका मिलेगा आज सभी को। और प्रोफेसर धीरज नाइक जो कि बजाज कॉलेज ऑफ साइंस वर्धा से हैं, उनके बारे में भी एनपी सिंह सर ने कई बार बताया कि एक अच्छे रिसर्चर और एक अच्छे साइंटिस्ट हैं। उनसे भी प्रतिभागियों को जो भी इस वर्कशॉप में भाग ले रहे हैं उनको सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। जो भी हमारे टीम के लोग हैं, डॉक्टर तुमुल सिंह, डॉक्टर एनपी सिंह, डॉक्टर डीके सिंह, ये जो ऑर्गेनाइजिंग टीम है हमारी, और इसके साथ ही जो भी अन्य शिक्षक इस पूरे कार्यक्रम से जुड़े हुए हैं, संजीव जी जो कुशल संचालन कर रहे हैं, सभी को हमारे तरफ से ये धन्यवाद है कि इतना अच्छा कार्यक्रम आप लोग आयोजित कर रहे हैं। ये डीबीटी स्टार स्टेटस जो महाविद्यालय को मिला हुआ है उसके माध्यम से ये कार्यक्रम आयोजित हो रहा है, तो मैं डीबीटी को भी धन्यवाद देता हूँ। साथ में जो रिसर्च और इनोवेशन के क्षेत्र में जो भी हमारे जो सहयोगी हैं, महाविद्यालय के सहयोगी हैं, साथ ही जो दूसरे महाविद्यालयों से और विश्वविद्यालयों से लोग इसमें कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं इस वर्कशॉप में, उन सभी लोगों को एक अच्छी जानकारी रिसर्च प्रॉब्लम फार्मुलेशन के ऊपर कि कैसे रिसर्च प्रॉब्लम बनाई जाती है, रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस कैसे बनाए जाते हैं, डाटा कलेक्शन और उसकी एनालिसिस कैसे की जाती है, कैसे की जा सकती है, क्या उसका तरीका, साइंटिफिक तरीका क्या हो सकता है, और कैसे हम रिसर्च प्रॉब्लम्स, रिसर्च क्वेश्चंस को सही दिशा में ले जा सकते हैं, सही उसको स्वरूप प्रदान कर सकते हैं। इस पे निश्चित रूप से इस वर्कशॉप में बात होगी। रिसर्च राइटिंग का जो प्रपोजल है, रिसर्च प्रपोजल कैसे बनाया जाए, एक अच्छा प्रपोजल कैसे बनाया जाए, क्योंकि रिसर्च फंडिंग एजेंसी से रिसर्च अवार्ड कराने के लिए या जो भी फंडिंग एजेंसी है उससे प्राप्त करने के लिए, कुछ प्राप्त करने के लिए जरूरी होता है कि एक अच्छा प्रपोजल बनाया जाए। उस पर भी यह वर्कशॉप प्रकाश डालेगी, मुझे ऐसा पूरा विश्वास है। प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल, एक अच्छा प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल बनाया जाना सबसे पहली आवश्यकता है, जिसमें शायद डिग्री कॉलेजेस जो है वो बहुत पीछे रह जाते हैं। तो जो भी डिग्री कॉलेजेस के प्रतिभागी हैं या डीबीटी स्टार स्कीम के अंतर्गत जो कॉलेजेस जुड़े हुए हैं, उनके लिए एक अच्छी वर्कशॉप हो सकती है ये। उनके फैकल्टीज के लिए अच्छी वर्कशॉप है कि एक अच्छा प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल कैसे बनाएं। इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स और पेटेंट फाइलिंग बहुत बड़ा इशू है कि प्रपोजल या कोई भी प्रोजेक्ट या कोई भी आउटकम जो है उस पर जो है हम लोग बहुत अच्छा नहीं कर पाते हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ें हमारी व्यर्थ चली जाती हैं। तो पेटेंट फाइलिंग के ऊपर भी बात होगी। IPR इशूज जो हैं, कॉपीराइट के जो इशूज हैं, उन पे भी निश्चित रूप से यहाँ पे बात होगी, जैसा मुझे विश्वास है। पब्लिकेशन और प्लेगरिज्म का भी इशू जो है बहुत बड़ा इशू है आज की डेट में, कि जो भी हम काम करें उसको सही तरीके से पब्लिश कराएं। और प्लेगरिज्म का जो पैरामीटर है, यूनिवर्सिटी ग्रांट कमीशन का पैरामीटर है, रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स के लिए जो पैरामीटर है, रिसर्च इनोवेशन में क्या क्या बातें प्लेगरिज्म के अंतर्गत आती हैं, इस पे भी मुझे उम्मीद है कि चर्चा होगी। तो ये सारी चीज़ें जो है एक ऐसा माहौल बनाएंगी कि जिससे आने वाले समय में उदय प्रताप महाविद्यालय से जो जुड़े हुए हमारे शोधार्थी हैं, हमारे जो फैकल्टी मेंबर्स हैं, वो भी लाभान्वित होंगे। साथ ही दूसरे महाविद्यालयों के, दूसरे विश्वविद्यालयों के लोग भी लाभान्वित होंगे, ऐसा मेरा पूरा विश्वास है। और लखोटिया सर, भारतेंदु कुमार जी और धीरज नायक सर के जो लेक्चर्स होंगे वो हम सभी के लिए जो है लाभदायक होंगे। मैं खुद इस वर्कशॉप से जुड़ा रहूँगा, सुनता रहूँगा। और भी बहुत सारे काम होते हैं, लेकिन काम करते हुए भी मैं लगातार जो है इस वर्कशॉप से जुड़े रहने का पूरा प्रयास करूँगा और खुद भी जानने का प्रयास करूँगा, क्योंकि मैं भी एक जो भी अपने फील्ड में जो कुछ मैं कर सकता हूँ, रिसर्च पेपर लिख सकता हूँ, उसमें कुछ भी जो कुछ भी इनपुट मिलेंगे उसको समाहित करने का प्रयास करूँगा, उसको इनकलकेट करने का प्रयास करूँगा, उसको जोड़ने का प्रयास करूँगा। ऐसा मेरा स्वयं का मानना है कि ऐसे विद्वान लोगों से, लखोटिया सर से, भारतेंदु सर से और धीरज नायक सर से सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। ये मेरे लिए गौरव का पल है। महाविद्यालय परिवार का मुखिया होने के नाते आज रिसोर्स पर्सन लेक्चर देने वाले हैं, सभी को विशेष रूप से उन सभी लोगों को धन्यवाद देते हुए, लखोटिया सर का आशीर्वाद लेते हुए जो है, क्योंकि वो हमारे जो है, मैं फिजिक्स केमिस्ट्री मैथ ग्रुप से, हालांकि मैंने बीएससी किया, लेकिन बाद में डीन भी बने थे हमारे, जब मैं बीएससी एमएससी के क्लासेस में वहाँ था उस समय जो है वो डीन भी बाद में बने थे। तो इस नाते मेरा ये मानना है कि वो हमारे शिक्षक हैं, हमारे फैकल्टी से जुड़े रहे, बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी से मैं वहीं का छात्र रहा हूँ। तो इस नाते जो है सदैव जो है उनके प्रति मैं आभारी हूँ कि वो इस वर्कशॉप में आज लेक्चर देने वाले हैं। गुरुओं के प्रति सदैव हम सभी लोगों का सम्मान रहता है। अंत में मैं राजर्षि जी को प्रणाम करते हुए, ये उन्हीं के आशीर्वाद से ये कोई भी कार्यक्रम, इतने अच्छे कार्यक्रम जो है फलीभूत हो रहे हैं। साथ ही अपने जो है IQAC इंचार्ज, IQAC कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर NP सिंह सर को धन्यवाद देता हूँ कि उन्होंने इतना अच्छा, इतनी अच्छी सोच के साथ कि जो हमारे नए फैकल्टी मेंबर्स हैं उनको जो है बार बार वो कहते थे कि प्राचार्य जी, जो हमारे नए फैकल्टी मेंबर्स हैं वो रिसर्च और इनोवेशन की फील्ड में कैसे जुड़ें, अच्छा रिसर्च पेपर कैसे लिखें, इसके बारे में एक वर्कशॉप जरूर होनी चाहिए। ये उन्हीं की प्रेरणा से ये वर्कशॉप हो रही है। मैं उनको विशेष रूप से धन्यवाद देता हूँ। राजर्षि जी के चरणों में प्रणाम करते हुए अपनी वाणी को विराम देता हूँ। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय राजर्षि।
धन्यवाद प्राचार्य जी, आज के वर्कशॉप के टॉपिक पर एक विस्तृत दृष्टिकोण डालने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। आपके द्वारा विस्तृत में बताया गया कि आज के वर्कशॉप का जो मुख्य उद्देश्य है कि रिसर्च राइटिंग कैसे की जाए, ट्रांस डिसिप्लिनरी और इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी रिसर्च कैसे किया जाए, डिफरेंट एजेंसी से ग्रांट लेने के लिए प्रपोजल्स कैसे तैयार किए जाएं, इन सब के बारे में विस्तृत जानकारी देने के लिए आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अब मैं IQAC के कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर NP सिंह जी से अनुरोध करता हूं कि वो आए और 2 शब्द बोलें, जिससे इस वर्कशॉप की शुरुआत की जा सके और उसको दिशा दिया जा सके। डॉक्टर NP सिंह जी, कोऑर्डिनेटर, IQAC UP College Varanasi.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Justice D.P. Singh, sir, President of UP College Governing Body, Secretary Justice S.K. Singh, sir, Governing Body, respected Principal Dr. D.K. Singh, sir, our speakers, Professor Dhiraj, Naik ji, and Honorable Speaker Professor S.C. Lakhotia, sir, and respected Dr. Bhartendu Kumar Singh, sir, IQAC Coordinator, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. It is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor S.C. Lakhotia, sir, Bhatnagar Awardee, Department of Zoology, Banaras Hindu University. I also welcome Professor Bhartendu Kumar Singh, sir, IQAC Coordinator, Banaras Hindu University, and my senior colleague, Professor Dhiraj Naik ji, Professor Bajaj University, and other members of this committee. On behalf of IQAC, I offer my regards to all the speakers and principal of the college. I welcome all the colleagues of the college and all the participants who are participating in this workshop. This workshop focused on the topic of research and innovations. The aim of the workshop is to establish a long-term research and innovation perspective and to identify the key challenges and opportunities ahead. The workshop outcome will be that participants give in knowledge on research problem formulation, data collection, analysis method, and other activities. I wish this workshop enlightens us all and provides us with approaches to deal with the problems of the present and future. Thank you everyone for attending and making the workshop possible with their opinion and views. Thank you everyone. Welcome our speakers and all the faculty members and all the participants of this workshop. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Singh, for inviting me to say some word in this workshop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for your welcome speech and for your wishes for this workshop. इस वर्कशॉप की शुरुआत की जाए, सेशन से स्टार्ट किए जाए, इसके पहले मैं वर्कशॉप के प्रारूप के बारे में थोड़ा चर्चा करना चाहता हूं। यह वर्कशॉप 3 सेशन में डिवाइडेड है। पहला सेशन अभी स्टार्ट होने वाला है। फर्स्ट सेशन जो टॉपिक है फर्स्ट सेशन का वो है रोल ऑफ फैकल्टी इन मीनिंगफुल रिसर्च फॉर यूजी एंड पीजी टीचिंग। रिसोर्स पर्सन इस सेशन के हैं प्रोफेसर धीरज नायक। हमारा दूसरा सेशन स्टार्ट होगा 12 बजे से, टाइमिंग रहेगी 12 से 1। टॉपिक उस सेशन का रहेगा एथिक्स ऑफ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट राइटिंग और उसके रिसोर्स पर्सन रहेंगे प्रोफेसर एससी लखोटिया सर। 1 से 2 लंच ब्रेक होगा। फिर हमारा तीसरा सेशन स्टार्ट होगा जो कि 2 से 3 रहेगा और यह सेशन रहेगा प्रोस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी एंड ट्रांसडिसिप्लिनरी रिसर्च और रिसोर्स पर्सन इस सेशन के रहेंगे प्रोफेसर भारतेंद्र कुमार सिंह जी। और उसके बाद 3 से हमारा वैलिडेटरी सेशन स्टार्ट होगा और वर्कशॉप का समापन होगा। मैं परमिशन लेना चाहता हूं प्राचार्य जी का कि पहला सेशन स्टार्ट किया जाए। प्राचार्य जी। प्राचार्य जी के आदेश से पहला सेशन स्टार्ट किया जा रहा है। जो फर्स्ट सेशन है उसका पहले जो हमने बताया टॉपिक वही है, रोल ऑफ फैकल्टी इन मीनिंगफुल रिसर्च फॉर यूजी एंड पीजी टीचिंग, और इसके रिसोर्स पर्सन है प्रोफेसर धीरज नायक सर। बिफोर we start the session, I would like to have some brief intro about Dr. Dhiraj Naik sir. Dr. Dhiraj Naik graduated from Absab Garwar College, Pune with major subject as botany. He did his post-graduation in botany with specialization in plant biotechnology. Then he completed PhD in botany in 2006 from University of Pune. Later, Dr. Naik went to USA for postdoc. He completed postdoc at two places in USA, West Virginia University and then Brookhaven National Lab in area of forest functional genomics and climate change ecology. After the postdoc career, Dr. Naik joined Indian Institute of Advanced Research in Gandhinagar as assistant professor in 2012. Dr. Naik completed two research projects mainly funded by DBT and DST in area of carbon sequestration. He has published 17 research publications in various international journals. At present, Dr. Naik is working as assistant professor at Janki Devi Bajaj College of Science, Wardha. He has over 10 years of work experience in teaching and research. He has mentored numerous research scholars and postdoc fellows and provided statistical support to several students. He has interests in area of statistical genomics, use of mixed models and linear models in field ecology and structural equation modeling. He has handled open source R statistical language for last 8 years. He has used his software extensively in genomics, ecology, and plant physiology research. So now I would like to Dr. Dhiraj Naik sir to start first session of this workshop. Dr. Dhiraj Naik sir.
Good morning. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Good morning to all the participants and मेरा सबको प्रणाम. First of all, I would like to, I'm very much thankful to Professor Dharmendra Singh, Principal of Uday Pratap College, convener of this faculty developmental workshop on innovation, Dr. Narendra Singh, who is a IQSC coordinator, Dr. Tumul Singh, who is a program coordinator of DBT STAR scheme, as well as the convener of this particular workshop. And also, I would like to give a huge thanks to organizing secretary, Dr. Singh sir, and to entire technical staff of this workshop to basically provide this platform to share my experience with you. So I have shared the slides. Can I? Okay, so today I'm going to discuss about meaningful research from undergraduate and postgraduate students and the role of faculty, or the role of research in undergraduate and postgraduate teaching. So before I start on this particular this topic, let me talk about few personality attributes like persistent, perseverance, hard work, and creativity. These are some of the personality attributes which also help to have a very successful research career, even being an undergraduate student. So why to participate in research at such an early stage of undergraduate? Mainly because research is a future, and research is, I would say, immensely of fun. It creates or it builds a reasonable amount of curiosity. One can nurture the curiosity, and one can also innovate or find out the things which are reasonably unknown. So it benefits students, faculty, and host institute, colleges. It develops an independent critical thinking skill. It also helps to develop, although sometimes it is painful to write or communicate science, but it also helps to create a oral as well as written communication skill. It build a ownership, because when our undergraduate students and postgraduate students do even a 1 month or say 6 month project, it create a kind of ownership. उस बच्चे को लगता है कि चलो मैं कुछ कर रहा हूँ, आई एम हैंडलिंग सर्टन इक्विपमेंट्स, मैं कुछ इक्विपमेंट्स हैंडल कर रहा हूँ, कुछ केमिकल्स हैंडल कर रहा हूँ, मैं फील्ड में ऑब्जर्वेशंस ले रहा हूँ. So there is a lot of ownership which students can build. There is if the project is in a group project, then there is a lot of team building skill can be also developed. It can develop a tolerance for obstacle, because whenever a student do any kind of a research based learning or say research based say a project, there are lots of obstacles, and sometimes a project can fail as well. But he learned to fail, and sometimes he also understand that okay, that science is not about just getting a lot of positive results. Sometimes even getting a negative results, students understand how to tolerate those negative results or how to understand those negative results. Again, students understand how the knowledge is constructed, because many times at undergraduate and postgraduate students are basically surrounded, or they learn the things through textbooks, through reference books, and they rarely handle research papers, or they rarely read review articles. So it's the students get to know first-hand experience in understanding how knowledge is constructed, how unknown things become unknown things, and how from research papers how the information is concise and created a model or some kind of a synthesis through the review articles, how the review articles are used for book chapters, and how the reference books are again a backbone of our textbook. So students understand the entire how the knowledge is constructed, and it develops their ability to think independently as well. Okay, they understand how to interpret the data, how to work on that as well. So this is something very important at our undergraduate level if we are able to nurture. And now has been shown in the entire world. I have just taken an example of University of California, Santa Barbara campus, where the undergraduate research, why there are so many reasons why people love research, why they have so much of passion about research, and it is openly published on websites of these universities where they encourage students to do undergraduate research. Apart from that, one of the highly impact journal like Nature has in fact written a column, a student's guide to undergraduate research. So even the highly impactful journals, or the journals which are considered to be the highly prestigious journals, those journals are also basically support undergraduate research by writing different types of columns and blogs in order to encourage faculties, irrespective of from where they are. They could be from a rural place, they could be from urban places, they could be from different countries, but they basically write these kind of columns to basically suggest faculties to participate into undergraduate research. Apart from that, even this is about, I would say, from these Western countries, but in fact, there is a site which I recommend all the participants, that is called India Bioscience org. This is a site which is a web portal which is available in India for all undergraduate teachers, for all postgraduate teachers, to basically understand what is going on in our country. And in fact, there was this column which is written by 4 different generations, means they are of different age class. Some people are senior, some senior scientists are of intermediate level, and some undergraduate teachers are just joined the college. And they are discussing undergraduate research in India. What is the platform which is available for BSc students, BCom students, BA students, and as well as MSc students? What kind of a platform we have, what kind of challenges we have, and how we can solve those problems. Apart from that, it is also discussed in one of the very popular English newspaper, The Hindu, where why integrating undergraduate research into our curriculum is important. So because of now this new national education policy, which is going to soon implemented, it is now very important to have undergraduate research as a part of our curriculum. And I think, needless to say, it is discuss in various platforms. Now in India also, with the help of ICERs, IITs, with the help of various universities, undergraduate research is gaining importance. Now there is one nice article which is written in this journal called Ecosphere. This is a journal which is very prestigious journal in the field of ecology. And the article title says, how do we ensure the future of our discipline is vibrant? Students' reflection on a career and culture of ecology. So right now in the entire world, even the many college teachers and faculties are discussing that how we can develop a next generation biologist, next generation students of any discipline, and how they would participate at an undergraduate level so that their career prospect will gain some say momentum, and from there they would build a very successful career in the field of any branch of science. So nowadays even there are lots of research articles and review articles which are published on undergraduate research, that how undergraduate research can be proliferated or has been encouraged further. Now, I'm going to discuss in this entire platform or in this session, what is the action plan which a college teacher, whether the college is from a rural area, from an urban area, the college may not have those many resources. What are the action plan which should be there in order to basically build the undergraduate research as well as postgraduate research, and how we can create even a research-based teaching as well. Because it is not necessary that we have to do classical teaching. We can take certain practicals in the form of projects as well. And when the students do the same practical in the form of projects, there is a likely chances that he may learn certain additional knowledge by converting that particular practical in the form of projects. And there is ample amount of scope in the field of, say, classical biology, ecology, environmental science, because there are many areas which requires reasonable amount of low resources, or the resources which doesn't require a lot of money. Now, with the help of DBT Star scheme, I'm sure Uday Pratap College will able to deliver a lot of undergraduate research, and there will be a lot of improvement in undergraduate research. So I'm going to discuss with you some action plan to how to start on this. The first thing is, make sure that students as well as the faculty, they should agree on a reasonable time-bound expectation. So because college teacher has lots of multitasking activity. He has to teach in the morning, in the afternoon he has to take practicals. Sometimes he's busy with the IPSC activities. He has to participate in administrative activities. He has to participate in extension activities like NCC, NSS. He has to look after sports. Sometimes he has to look after extracurricular activity. So if we look at the college teachers have lots of tasks in every day to cover up this responsibility. So therefore, in order to start undergraduate research and postgraduate research, it's always good to start early. What I really mean by here, when the college begin at say during June or July time, there is a plenty of time in the few early months, because the practicals start generally once the admission is completed. So I think at that time, second year BSc student, third year BSc student, and the second year MSc student, they already are adapted to the college custom and college curriculum. And therefore, if they start their any ideas, just throwing certain ideas and having certain undergraduate discussion, research discussion or project discussion in those months, then it is going to help them to have a complete project. Again, be proactive in a student placement. That means even a teacher has to decide how many students he can basically take under him, because it is not possible to take it sometimes entire batch. You can take few students or group of students to basically participate in undergraduate research. Again, discuss how to manage the project time, because the teacher has a time bound activities. He has to take lectures, he has to take practicals. So it's important to find the precise time for a project discussion, for research-based discussion, and stick to it. Ensure the commitment from both the stakeholders, means a student should also give a reasonable amount of commitment, because what happened, typically what I found when I do undergraduate research at my college as well, at various other places, that there is a lot of excitement at early days of the research. And as the research goes on, that excitement lower downs, and sometimes students give up on those projects if he doesn't give convincing results. So it's always good to have a kind of commitment from both the stakeholders, like students and teachers, to basically ensure the commitment for time as well as for that particular project, and they will nurture that project till the end. So time-bound management means time-based research activity ensures a good start. That is the first action plan. The second action plan is to check institution and departmental facilities and as well as safety to confirm working hours and space utilities or resources. See, it is important to understand working hours of the staff which is available in that particular department, because the students are sometimes are not familiar with the non-teaching staff, or even if they are there, they don't understand. They think that, okay, the college starts at 9 o'clock, ends at 5 o'clock. So even if they have to do little additional activity, they find it uncomfortable. So we have to make sure that the students understand that, okay, there are certain resources are available during odd hours, and they should get utilized those hours. Again, when they work during odd hours, or let's say probably or the Saturday evening, or say Saturday morning or Monday morning, early morning, one should ensure the personal safety as well as the personal or group safety as well, and generally avoid carelessness. If they are doing some kind of a pipetting, if they're working in the botanical garden, or they're working in a small field, agriculture field, which is nearby their college, let's say at the evening time or early morning time, there should be reasonable amount of safety. Okay. Understand the lab working space, how to use lab working space judiciously, because I'm sure that in a college, sometimes you have a junior college, that is 11, 12 standard students. They also pip in and they have practicals during early morning hours. Sometimes the MSc students also use the same common lab for the BSc lab. So sometimes it is difficult for faculties as well as students to find a working lab space. And even if it is there, one has to use it very judiciously in order to make sure that you do not, create any kind of a conflict, or let's say there is a conflict between sharing the work management, where both the things are possible. Understand the values of resources. Whenever the students handle a spectrophotometer, he handles glass pipette, he uses lots of glassware, use few chemicals, and even if he uses certain sources from botanical garden or from museum or from say agricultural land or from any other workshop, the students should have this clear-cut understanding that these resources are absolutely valuable, they need to be maintained properly and should be utilized effectively. And it is also, students should have this understanding, and the faculty should also put some efforts that research can be done with the minimum resources. Many times it is people think that, okay, you need to have a very high profile equipments to do research, but let me tell you, there are plenty of areas in the field of botany, zoology, microbiology, chemistry, mathematics, and many other areas where you can do lots of interdisciplinary activities and try to do the undergraduate research with the help of minimum resources. So it's absolutely important to understand that the resource management is equally important. Time management is also equally important. Now, be realistic about expectation from the students, because what happens when the students start doing project, they think that, okay, everything what they do need to be published. So sometimes because of publication pressure, students as well as teacher give, they overcommit and do less. So it's always good to have a realistic project. It's always good to think, simple, clear, concise, and sometimes even precise, instead of thinking about rocket science, thinking about very complicated problem where we know that neither students nor faculty can deliver more. So it's always good to think about realistic problem. Stick to one research problem at a time, because if you take too many research projects, it is likely possible that you would not able to deliver to all these projects. So it's always good, because every teacher is at different age class, and there are he being a teacher, he also have lots of family responsibilities and other administrative responsibility. It is always good to work in a precise or specialized research area. You can do interdisciplinary research, you can do transdisciplinary research, or you can do subject specific research, but by focusing on one research problem at a time. Again, the students, the faculty should able to help the students to write the titles of that project, because if the students, he can write as many titles as he can, because that helps student to think more and more. He can design about methodology. You can take a help here about whatever the literature which is available on the Google, as well as in the research paper, as well as in few other journals, research paper. He can download those, take a print, and decide the methodology. Here also, when the students start getting some kind of results, it's always good to prepare those results in the form of tables and figures. Now, when the students is of different, say, years, first year student, second year, it's always good to discuss their curriculum and ensure that that project is designed in such a way that it can help indirectly the curriculum as well. So here, a faculty can do a lot of research-based teaching. Okay, because if there is a, let's say there is a topic of ecology, and there are certain few practicals of, say, quadrat analysis. So instead of giving that as a practical, a faculty can design a research project in the nearby areas and quantify the community analysis and write a simple project on it. If the data comes really good, he can go for a Indian journal, he can go for a international journal, but it depends upon the story, it depends upon the amount of information which is created by the students. And therefore, if you want to repeat that particular exercise, you can do that exercise again next year also. So it's always good to have a kind of a very good platform or very good research project which will be helpful for the students' curriculum. Now, sometimes a background knowledge of that teachers, because every teacher will have its own specialization, and therefore he is comfortable in that particular say domain, and therefore if he design those projects where the background knowledge of the teacher help the students to understand the science behind those studies, then that group is going to create a lot of productive information. But if the faculty is just out of the say risk, or just to show that okay, he's doing some fashionable research and he takes a topic which is not comfortable for him but looks fashionable, in that case there is a likely chances of typical over excitement, and that excitement will dilute over the time, because the students, if they don't get enough mentoring for that project may fail. Okay, so it is always good to start with the background knowledge. Again, whenever students work and they are going to interact quite often with you, they are going to have almost monthly meetings or probably bi-weekly meetings. In that case, the faculty would feel little overwhelmed. He will feel little, he may get irritated because the students are all time interacting with them, asking so many questions. So it is possible that they might get sometimes, they lose the interest, or they might get sometimes angry. So in that case, having a positive affirmation that even if students bother you too much, it's okay, because after all, those are dependent students. They are dependent researchers. They do not have any idea of how the research is done. In that case, at early stages of research, it is always found that the students are going to bother faculties quite often, and therefore the faculty has to keep his emotional intelligence in such a way that he shows a positive affirmation and encourage students to do research. Then it's always good to learn the research by doing it and be organized, be meticulous. It's always good to do anything or perform the experiment, repeat the experiment. So you can, by doing certain experimentation in at least 2-3 times, repeat them by in a different years, or repeat them from different students, and see that they get some data from that particular. You can work in the lab, you can work in the field at odd hours. So it is likely possible कि आपको बच्चे को लेके कहीं फील्ड में जाना है, अर्ली मॉर्निंग जाना है, तो उस टाइम में सेफ्टी इंपॉर्टेंट है, और जो टास्क करना है उस टास्क करने की जो जरूरतें हैं उसको भी समझना जरूरी है. कभी कभार ऐसे भी हो सकता है कि देयर इज अ लाइकली चांसेस दैट जैसे कि zoology में या environmental science में you go in the evening time, and then in the evening time also, if there are students and the students, some students are girls, some students are boys, then we need to maintain the safety. We need to make sure that they go home or they reach to the hostel very safely. So safety is first thing, but at the same time, whatever hours you are going to spend, make sure that you utilize them effectively. Again, don't expect, when they are doing so many experimentation, don't expect to results immediately. There is a likely possible that they may fail in some cases. They might have to repeat those experiments again. So instead of jumping directly on the results or sometimes on conclusion of those experiments, let's do more of a brainstorming activity. Write as many hypotheses as you can, or write as many questions as you can, because from negative results also there is a likely chances that you would end up creating many new hypotheses. Okay, again, interpret these results with some kind of finding some obvious context as well. It is likely possible that the negative results can be also helpful to write the discussion. Again, force student or encourage students to basically prepare scientific methodology. Write a hypothesis, write a question, address a methodology, do some experimentation, and after experimentation, whatever the results they get, organize them in the form of tables and figures. Prepare some charts, prepare some models, and when you write results and discussion about it. Now, also teach prepare students from nature of dependency to nature of independency, because at the early stages students are completely dependent on you, completely dependent on faculty. Now, as you keep teaching few things, you can allow them or ask question that can you do this particular exercise next time in my absentia or in my absence. The students will say yes or no, but slowly as they practice more and more those say activities, research activities, they will definitely tell you, sir, next time हम खुद ही करेंगे, हमें आपकी जरूरत नहीं है. So that is the best thing in the undergraduate research. If the student become an independent research performer or independent thinker, that is what the faculty, if the faculty achieve that, that is what it is the final goal of this undergraduate research. So nurture the students' meticulous behavior, because you will find some students, they are extremely honest, sincere, and they participate in each and every activity. Whereas there you will find some student थोड़े से स्लो लर्नर रहता है, पीछे रहता है, फिर वो चाहते हैं कि कोई दूसरा स्टूडेंट्स उनके आगे आके इनिशिएटिव ले लीजिए. तो उन चीजों में क्या होता है कि हमें दिखता है कि उस ग्रुप में कई स्टूडेंट्स थोड़े पीछे रह के सिर्फ देख रहे हैं. ऐसे चीजों में क्या करना है कि आपको रोटेशन में रखना है, बच्चों को रोटेशन में रखना है कि भाई इस टाइम तू ये एक्सरसाइज करेगा, next time तू करेगा. So keep them in a rotation, and because of that, what is going to happen, you are going to get unbiased results as well. Because if the one student is doing it, he is making some silly mistake, it is likely possible that the other students may correct those mistakes as well. So it's always good to nurture thinking, experimenting, and even writing exercise from the students. Forget about the language barrier, because I know that we are non-native English speaker. We are not born in, say, those Western country where the mother tongue is basically English. हमारी मदर टंग है, हिंदी है, मराठी है, बाकी की लैंग्वेजेस है हमारे देश की. सो इट इज, आई एग्री एब्सोल्युटली कि इंग्लिश में बहुत बार मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट लिखना, एक रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट लिखना बहुत दिक्कतें आती है. उनको सोचने के लिए आप फोर्स करते रहिए, उनको सोचने के लिए आप एनकरेज करते रहिए, क्योंकि थोड़े टाइम के बाद स्टूडेंट्स का इंग्लिश डेवलप हो जाता है. उसको जितना आप एनर्जाइज करोगे, कॉन्फिडेंस बनाना जरूरी है. एक बार कॉन्फिडेंस बनने के बाद जैसे ही बच्चा एक तरह से अंडरग्रेजुएट रिसर्च में घुस जाता है या पार्टिसिपेट करता है, उसको समझ में आता है कि भाई पैराग्राफ की शुरुआत कैसी करनी पड़ती है, एंड कैसे करना पड़ता है, समरी कैसी लिखनी है. तो उसकी जब तक प्रैक्टिस नहीं होती है तब तक हर एक आदमी को ऐसे ही लगेगा कि भाई मेरा इंग्लिश तो पुअर है, मैं कुछ लिख नहीं पाऊंगा. But let me tell you, everybody says practice make man perfect. It is clear that if you repeat these activities, student after few months of these research activity, as well as the faculty after few years of this research activity, as well as the postgraduate students after few semesters research performance, they would able to write very nice research projects. So keep going with this activity. Now let's structure the students' time when they are in the lab, and even also design the deliverable at the end of the experience, because you cannot assume that the student have a lot of time management experience. बहुत सारे बच्चों को तो टाइम मैनेजमेंट कैसे करना होता है यही नहीं पता होता है. बस कॉलेज में आते हैं, लेक्चर्स करते हैं, प्रैक्टिकल करते हैं, घर जाते हैं, बाकी के एक्टिविटीज में पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं, बट इफेक्टिव टाइम मैनेजमेंट, जैसे कि सुबह के 1 घंटे में कितना काम हो सकता है, आधा घंटे में कितना काम हो सकता है, 20 मिनट में भी ऑब्जर्वेशन हो सकते हैं. एक ऐसे करना है, कोई प्रोटीन ऐसे करने के लिए बोला, पहले टाइम में उनको 1 घंटा लग सकता है, बट वही एक्टिविटीज जब दूसरे टाइम करेंगे शायद उनको आधा घंटा लगेगा, उसके बाद और कम टाइम लगेगा. सो इफ यू स्ट्रक्चर देयर इन्वॉल्वमेंट, आने के बाद लैब में आते हैं या फील्ड में आते हैं, उनको इमीडिएटली बोलना है कि भाई अभी तुम्हारे पास 1 घंटा है, इस 1 घंटा में हमें क्या क्या अचीव करना है. तो वहां स्ट्रक्चर करने के बाद क्या होता है, बच्चों को अपनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी समझ में आती है कि भाई मेरे पास इतना टाइम है, उसके बाद मेरा लेक्चर है या सर का प्रैक्टिकल है, तो सर अवेलेबल नहीं होंगे या मैं इसमें पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर सकता हूँ, तो इस घंटे को मैं कैसे यूटिलाइज करूँ. और उसमें ग्रुप प्रोजेक्ट हो तो बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से बच्चे एक दूसरे के साथ शेयरिंग करते कि भाई तू इतना काम कर, मैं इतना काम करूंगा, चलो उसके बाद हम शेयरिंग करेंगे. आजकल व्हाट्सएप के जमाने में तो आसानी है बहुत बार फोटो निकालना या डेटा को एक दूसरे के साथ शेयर करना, फोटोग्राफ को शेयर करना. सो इट इज रियली एक्साइटिंग टाइम फॉर द एंटायर कंट्री to participate in this undergraduate research because of there are so many facilities which are available. Again, encourage all these good practices of planning the experiment. पहले वीक प्लानिंग करो, दूसरे वीक उसको एग्जीक्यूट करो, एंड देन वो एग्जीक्यूट करते करते उसको लिखना जरूरी है. आपके नोटबुक में लिखना है, नोटबुक शेयर करनी है. और कभी कभार बच्चे किसी कारण फैमिली बैकग्राउंड के या फैमिली इश्यूज से ज्यादा कंटिन्यूस नहीं आ पाते, दूसरा बच्चा उसमें पार्टिसिपेट कर सकता है, क्योंकि देयर इज sometimes a limitations with the individual research project. If you have only one student, it's always good to basically have a group project so that a single student doesn't have the whole responsibility of doing everything. ज्यादा बच्चे होने के कारण आप रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज को शेयर कर सकते हो, और शेयर करने से ये एक टीम वर्क जैसा काम हो जाता है, जिसके कारण किसी बच्चे के घर में कुछ हो सकता है, ही मे नॉट बी अवेलेबल इन नेक्स्ट वीक, शायद कभी कभार बीमार भी हो जाता है, घर में कोई इश्यूज, आजकल कोरोना के कारण तो इतना सारा सिचुएशन घर में डेवलप हो चुका है कि स्टूडेंट्स आर स्टिल गोइंग थ्रू दैट ट्रॉमा, एंड देयरफॉर वी हैव टू बी अ वेरी सिंपैथेटिक अफर्मेटिव वे to energize the students. Again, be proactive in dividing their time and our time. A faculty has to also make sure that उसकी जो commitment है वो commitment को stick करे. कभी कभार over commitment करने के कारण भी बहुत बार teachers undergo it has a stressful life बन जाता है, ना वो कहीं अच्छी तरह से deliver नहीं कर पाता है. So it's always build a very dedicated time for doing these activities. Again, give students a lot of time to read basically protocols. Now, आजकल क्या हो रहा है, हर एक चीज हम ऑनलाइन पढ़ रहे हैं, कुछ भी करो, बुक्स का यूटिलाइजेशन दिन ब दिन कम होता जा रहा है. बट इट्स ऑलवेज गुड टू आस्क स्टूडेंट्स, हैव यू रीड अ प्रोटोकॉल, हैव यू रीड दिस, हैव यू अंडरस्टूड ईच एंड एवरी सेंटेंस, हैव यू अंडरस्टूड द टर्मिनोलॉजी. सो आस्किंग हिम, वेरीफाइंग दैट ही इज अलाइनिंग विद आवर अंडरस्टैंडिंग, उसको प्रोजेक्ट समझ में आया, उसको काम समझ में आया, ये चीजें वेरीफाई करना जरूरी है. स्पेंड सेवरल आवर्स, समटाइम्स आपको बहुत बड़ा टाइम मिलता है और उस बच्चे के पास भी टाइम है, तो एट अ स्ट्रेच काम कर लीजिए, एट अ स्ट्रेच थोड़ा लंबा काम कर लीजिए. उससे क्या होता है कि एक तो स्टूडेंट्स में उस सीरियसनेस डेवलप हो जाता है, स्टूडेंट्स को यही समझता है कि भाई रिसर्च इज जस्ट फैशन नहीं है, इसको अच्छी तरह से करना है, ये अपने करियर के लिए हेल्प कर रहा है. फैकल्टी को भी समझ में आता है कि भाई मैं एक एट अ स्ट्रेच काम कर रहा हूँ, तो मैं सच में रिसर्च में पार्टिसिपेट कर रहा हूँ. बहुत बार टीचर्स को लगता रहता है कि मैं टीचिंग कर रहा हूँ, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कर रहा हूँ, कॉलेज की जिम्मेदारियां भी कंप्लीट कर रहा हूँ, बट मैं रिसर्च नहीं कर रहा हूँ. तो जब भी आपको एट अ स्ट्रेच काम करने का कोई मौका मिलता है तो उसको खोइए मत, बिकॉज ये चांस बार बार नहीं मिलता है। इसके कारण आपको अच्छा भी लगता है, चलो मैंने इस दिवाली के कुछ टाइम में या उसके बाद वाले जो थोड़ा सा बफर टाइम रहता है जहाँ कॉलेज शुरुआत होने में टाइम रहता है, तो वहाँ आपका रिसर्च अच्छी तरह से हो जाए। So spend several hours on that. Pay attention to students से एनर्जी लेवल। कभी कभार मैंने बोला कि बच्चे बहुत अलग अलग माहौल में फिलहाल रह रहे हैं। when they are coming to the college they may be financially unstable। कभी कभार बच्चे के पास अफोर्ड नहीं होता है उतने टाइम आने के लिए, तो there is a likely chances that they are financially limited। some students are emotionally not that much competent। so have that affirmative way, support students from every aspect। Then help students to think in a broader perspective। For example, if you think them like a forest and trees, I doesn't really mean by forest and trees, I'm giving analogy of forest and tree। Forest बहुत बड़ा रहता है, right? Whenever we see any picture of forest, we always know it's a very large area of the trees where the trees are naturally growing। So it's always important during learning process of research-based learning to basically allow students to think about a broader picture of their research and then each experiment का क्या contribution है उस broader picture में, उस broader story में, ये भी उनको बताना जरूरी है। क्योंकि एक छोटा छोटा एक्सपेरिमेंट जब करते जाएंगे बच्चे, तब जाके बहुत बड़ी उसमें एक्यूमुलेट हो जाता है, रिजल्ट्स एक्यूमुलेट हो जाते हैं और बाद में उस पूरे स्टोरी में वो कोई कंट्रीब्यूट कर सकता है। बहुत बार क्या होता है, बच्चों को ये रोज का जो एक्टिविटीज रहता है उसको अंडर वैल्यू करते हैं, क्या है रोज ही करना है, तो दे थिंक दैट दिस इज अ वेरी बोरिंग वर्क। समटाइम्स उनका इंटरेस्ट लूज हो जाता है। सो इट्स ऑलवेज गुड टू टेल देम कि आज का काम किया ये यहाँ एक्यूमुलेट होने वाला है, ये सो इट्स बेसिकली इंक्रीमेंटल गेन। स्टूडेंट्स अंडरस्टैंड दैट इफ दे वर्क एवरी वीक there is a likely possible that this will combine together and it will help our main hypothesis or research question। So it always help them to create this incremental gain। Impress them with the value of work। उनको ये इंप्रेशन देना बहुत जरूरी है कि जो कुछ भी कर रहा है, माइक्रोस्कोपी के नीचे स्लाइड बना रहा है, माइक्रोस्कोप के नीचे क्वांटिटेटिव एनाटॉमी कर रहा है, कोई क्लासिकल बॉटनी का काम कर रहा है, क्लासिकल जूलॉजी का काम कर रहा है, क्लासिकल शायद कोई एक्सपेरिमेंट भी कर रहा है जो ऑलरेडी बुक में पब्लिश है या बुक में अवेलेबल है, उसके ऊपर रिसर्च कर रहा है कोई, इट्स ऑलवेज गुड थिंग। Impress students that whatever you are doing is going to build his soft skills and hard skills। because soft skills and hard skills जब बच्चे के बन जाते हैं, बच्चा अंडरग्रेजुएट रिसर्च भी कर सकता है और बाद में उसका करियर प्रोफाइल भी डेवलप कर सकता है। वो सब्जेक्ट में सीरियस हो जाता है, सिंसियर हो जाता है, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। एंड देन हेल्प देम टू अंडरस्टैंड ईच एंड एवरी स्टेप। कभी कभार वो फेल भी हो जाएंगे, कभी कभार उनके एक्टिविटी ऐसे वर्क नहीं होगा, कभी कभार उनके ऑब्जर्वेशंस में आइदर एक्सट्रीम वैल्यूज आएंगे जिसे आउटलायर्स बोलते हैं स्टैटिस्टिक के लैंग्वेज में, तो उनको समझ में नहीं आता है भाई इसका स्टैटिस्टिक कैसे हैंडल करना है, इसका हिस्टोग्राम कैसे बनाना है, इसका लाइन प्लॉट कैसे करना है, ऐसे चीजों में हेल्प देम टू अंडरस्टैंड। Now always remember, because if the students they work for a almost complete year, we have to, because they are aspiring scientists, they want to be something after their graduation and therefore find the opportunities to present their work। तो आप बोलेगे सर हमारे यहाँ अभी चलो ये स्टूडेंट्स है, आपके पास डीबीटी स्टार स्कीम है, तो आप इन बच्चे के लिए एक छोटा सा स्टूडेंट कॉन्फ्रेंस भी अरेंज कर सकते हैं, स्टूडेंट सेमिनार भी रख सकते हैं। वो डिपार्टमेंट भी कर सकता है, कॉलेज भी कर सकता है, नेशनल लेवल भी बच्चा जा सकता है, इंटर यूनिवर्सिटीज लेवल भी बच्चा जा रहा है, बट अलाउ स्टूडेंट्स टू पार्टिसिपेट देयर रिसर्च वर्क or present their research work in the form of oral presentation, poster presentation, in case of quizzes or debate competition about this research। So give them a platform to present their work। If at all that works come really well, publish that research work in peer-reviewed journal। I really mean peer-reviewed journal। I little bit to certain extent में open access journals को थोड़ा सा मैं बोलता हूँ कि आप थोड़े के लिए दूर रखिए इनको। अच्छे जर्नल्स है हमारे कंट्री में, अंडर ग्रेजुएट जर्नल रिसर्च भी पब्लिश कर सकते हैं। इंडियन करंट साइंस है, जर्नल ऑफ बायो साइंस है, रेजोनेंस जैसे जर्नल्स है, बहुत सारे अच्छे जर्नल हमारे कंट्री में है जिनको अभी इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म मिल चुका है। ऐसे नहीं है कि पहले बोला जाता था इंडियन जर्नल्स, अभी ये इंडियन जर्नल्स दे आर इंटरनेशनल जर्नल्स ओनली। They have been published by many international publishers like Springer। So जरूरत नहीं है कि उसे ओपन एक्सेस में पब्लिश करके निपटा लेने की कोशिश मत करिए, उसको रिवाइज करिए, सिंथेसाइज करिए। प्रोफेसर लखोटिया सर इसके बारे में बहुत कुछ बात करने वाले हैं आज, तो let us take advice from him as well as writing the manuscript, and I'm sure he is going to help us in a very precise way and very elegant way. So that is also a very good thing, that if at all we able to do that kind of, and it is going to be really groundbreaking if we able to publish undergraduate research. So please provide the students opportunity to improve that, because this is not only going to allow students to get any publication और उनका CV में ऐड होगा, आपके भी CV में ऐड होगा, बट इसके अलावा स्टूडेंट्स को कम्युनिकेशन स्किल भी काफी इंप्रूव हो जाता है. Now, after all, let's see, when the student is going to work under DBT star scheme and going to do so many undergraduate projects, there is a likely chances that कि बहुत सारे बच्चे जो खास करके स्लो लर्नर रहते हैं, जो उनको लगता है कि दे आर नॉट इंटेलेक्चुअल, यहाँ बच्चे थोड़े इंटिमिडेटेड हो जाता है या फ्रस्ट्रेटेड भी हो जाते हैं या ओवर एंशियस हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि हर जगह जब ये बच्चे खुद अपने जिम्मेदारी के ऊपर जब अंडरग्रेजुएट रिसर्च या रिसर्च बेस्ड टीचिंग करेंगे, तो यहाँ वो बहुत सारे मिस्टेक्स भी करेंगे, उनके एक्सपेरिमेंट फेल भी हो सकते हैं, कभी कभार उनका ध्यान कम हो सकता है, तो हैंडल देम रीजनेबली वेल, डोंट स्कोल्ड देम ऑल टाइम. उनको जरूरत नहीं है कि हर टाइम उनको क्रिटिसाइज करना, जरूरत है वहां कर लीजिए, बट जहां जरूरत नहीं है, हमें पता है कि ये बच्चा नेक्स्ट टाइम उनको उसमें अच्छा करेगा, वहां हम उसको कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. Now here is the rapport. We need to develop a rapport because students is going to work with a long-term relationship, and we need to keep in touch. Now that is about the undergraduate research. Undergraduate research will develop a team build, student mentorship, and finally this project. So with that, these are my references for this particular discussion, and I thank you all of you for listening to this lecture. And if at all there are any questions, I would ready to answer the questions.
के स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट बुलेट करनी है, जैसे बोलने की लैंग्वेज में बना के कौन बोलेंगे?
हाँ, संजीव सर से एक बार पूछ लीजिए, अगर वो बोलेंगे तो सही है.
Thank you, Dr. Naik, for your wonderful lecture. Actually, इस lecture से
Thank you, Dr. Dhiraj Naik sir, for such an informative lecture, and it is very much related and pertinent to the scheme that we have today, the DBT star scheme. And we were really facing problems that how to do the projects with the students when we have so many number of students, like maybe 300 in BSc first year or more than that also. So sometimes it becomes very difficult for us to manage a particular project with all those students, and we also kept on learning the things when we started with the DBT star scheme. But now we are following the new education policy, and we have undertaken projects in BSc first year. It's now added to our curriculum, and we are really getting some kind of response from the students also, like a positive response from the students also who are doing the projects. But right now our major challenge is how to publish these works, because we have huge lot of students and they are simply learning the things, learning to handle the equipments, learning to handle the chemicals. So in BSc first year, it's a bit difficult, but I think by the time they will reach the third year,
they will definitely do well.
Definitely they will do some good job. And I think Professor Lakhotia sir has joined us, and it will be really nice to hear from him about how we can publish our research and what are the basic ethics of the research. For this, I would like to invite Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh, Head of the Department of Psychology, to give a formal introduction to Professor Lakhotia sir, and I welcome Professor Lakhotia sir in the each today.
Thank you, Dr. Tumul. So, we are going to start our second session. And before we start, I would like to have some brief introduction about Lakhotia sir, because he is the resource person of this session. Professor S.C. Lakhotia, born on 4th October 1945 in Churu, a city near Thar Desert in Indian state of Rajasthan, graduated from Bajaj Vidyasagar College, Calcutta University in Zoology Honours in 1964. Lakhotia sir did his master's degree in zoology and comparative anatomy and doctoral studies from Calcutta University. He secured his PhD in 1970, did his postdoc studies at Delhi University. He joined Banaras Hindu University as a reader in 1976 and became a full professor in 1984 and continued there until superannuation in 2010. Professor Lakhotia is a Raja Ramanna Fellow of the Department of Science and Technology and the Department of Atomic Energy. He is an elected fellow of all three major Indian science academies: Indian National Science Academy, Indian Academy of Sciences, and National Academy of Sciences, India. The Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, the apex agency of the Government of India for Scientific Research, awarded him the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology, one of the highest Indian science award in 1989 for his contribution to biological sciences. Presently, Professor Lakhotia is serving as Professor Emeritus in Department of Zoology, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. He has more than 150 research papers in national and international journals and more than 4,400 citation to his credit. I welcome Professor Lakhotia in this session to deliver his talk. Professor Lakhotia, sir.
Thank you all. I will share my slides now.
Sure, sir, sure.
Yes. Are my slides now visible?
No, sir.
No?
No.
But they should be visible now. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Slide is visible now.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the Pratap College that it has organized this kind of meeting under Star Scholar scheme. And what I would want to do here is just give broad outlines about ethics and research publications. This is a very vast topic, but I'll just try to summarize major issues that are concerned and that can be useful for the all the teachers who are interested in research, because that is something that we all need to do. Now, first, let me explain my viewpoint of what is research. See, the research starts with ability to wonder, curiosity, and mankind has a unique feature that we can wonder at ourselves, why we are, or how we think, why we think, and this is something that we can, I'd say that ability to wonder at our own ability to wonder is something that mankind has. And this was facilitated, this knowledge was facilitated because of the human species developed written and spoken language. Spoken language are common in many animals, but then the written language and more sophisticated language that became instrumental in progress of civilizations. And this combined with curiosity and self-driven efforts to satisfy the curiosity is what lies at the root of research, that we are curious and we want to satisfy our curiosity. That's what research is. And what research involves is a systematic and creative investigation in any domain of knowledge, which can be philosophical, materialistic issues, or anything in this universe that can be perceived by our senses. Measure five senses. If whatever we can perceive, we can be curious and we can try to understand what it is. And as a consequence of research, we create new knowledge, and this knowledge has owners who create this new knowledge and recipients with whom we share this knowledge. The owners share this knowledge to recipients, and in fact, as in summary, we can say that growth of human civilization has been and continues to be dependent upon research in any domain. Whatever, as we go knowledge, the knowledge keeps on increasing, and with every incremental knowledge, the civilization makes an advance. Now, this is where we need to understand three things that are related: ethics, moral values, and law. They can vary in different contexts, societies, cultures, and nations, but in general, ethics is a system of accepted beliefs that control behavior. Now, again, these are society dependent, context dependent, but this is a very broad definition which overlaps to some extent with morality. Principles that define what is good and bad or right and wrong is what we consider under morality. Laws, on the other hand, they can be oral laws or they can be written laws which regulate expected social conduct in public space and involve punishment for violation. And this is why ethical and moral behaviors are expected to be followed, but laws are required to be followed. I mean, there's a difference. We expect one to be ethical, we expect one to be moral, but laws are definitely to be followed. Now, where does come importance of ethics in research? Is the most prime factor for sustainability of civilization, the background of finite resources, because the resources are finite. Therefore, civilization depends on that all the members of public, all who make up the society, follow ethical conduct. And development in science and technology take us forward, because that's where the societies have been evolving, and because of acquisition of capabilities to exploit scientific understanding and then to exploit that understanding for technology. And ethics and values again become critical in sustainable development. Poor quality of education and research that we experience today is due to erosion of ethical values in society in general and in education and research in particular. And the fact that we are becoming more and more conscious of ethics is partly because the unhealthy competition due to over-increasing population and the lure of quick material gains have tarnished the conventional image of teachers and researchers who were expected to be role models to work not only for self-satisfaction but more for general benefits. अध्यापकों को सभी रोल मॉडल मानते हैं, लेकिन अगर अध्यापकों के बिहेवियर एथिकल नहीं होगा, and this is what our problem says, that's where we have to have rules and regulations कि ethical behavior हम करें, ethics को follow करें, और इसी context में कि research में ethics से कहाँ पे कैसे follow कर सकते हैं, वो discussion हम कर रहे हैं. Ethics की research में क्या आवश्यकता है, why it is important? Because research is search for truth, and if it is not obtained in ethical ways, then सत्य की खोज सही नहीं होगी. The scope and depth of research are increasing exponentially. As we learn more, we can get deeper, we can ask more and more questions, and therefore research activity has become highly competitive because research academy output in academia is taken as a measure of individuals' accomplishments for career prospects and recognition. हम कितने आगे बढ़े हुए हैं वो डिपेंड करता है हमने कितने रिसर्च की, कितने पब्लिकेशन किए. ये हायर एजुकेशन में एक एसेंशियल पैरामीटर हो गया है. In addition, translation research, applied research has material benefits as well. Patent लेना, उसका benefit करना, industry बनाना. So all these become issues for competition. And because human nature follows the laws of thermodynamics, that unless we input energy, things tend to go to ground state or disordered state. Accordingly, ethics also tends to indulge in selfish activities, human behavior, and that's what increases social entropy. which results in loss of integrity and honesty. And that's why we need to maintain, we need to make everybody conscious of what is ethical behavior. And that's what it is. And fortunately, you see, human society evolves its own ethical set of conduct rules, and so has research community evolved its own set of conduct rules to safeguard against unwarranted behavior of researchers, so that a cascading negative impact on the profession and or society is avoided. एक किसी ने गलती करके कोई गलत बता दिया तो लोग उसको विश्वास करके आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे, and then they will end up in more serious problems, and that's what we call cascading effect. So basic requirements for maintaining ethical conduct in research is that we must be reliable, we must be integrate, we must have our good integrity, and we must be objective. हम जो interpretation दे रहे हैं वो हमारे मन से है, इसलिए वो सही है गलत है ऐसा नहीं. Objectivity होना चाहिए, impartial judgment हमारी finding होनी चाहिए. It must be accurate and transparent. किस तरीके से क्या हमने method follow किया, that should be very clearly known to everyone. We must respect for intellectual property. We must do responsible publication and mentoring. As teachers, we have to mentor young students, and that's where responsibility becomes more and more. Then when we do research, we must make sure that we protect human rights, we protect animal rights, we protect environment. We do not do something that can disrupt environment because of our research and the way we conduct research. We must maintain confidentiality and anonymity, especially when it comes to peer reviewing, examination, and so on. That is an essential requirement. We must be accountable, and legally we must not be doing wrong things. Accountability, because society looks at researchers, society funds research, and therefore we remain accountable to society. And we must do research in a non-discrimination manner and the social responsibility. And therefore, as in summary, integrity and honesty is essential for sustainable research. Researcher के obligations क्या हैं? Obligation to society to honor the trust played by others. See, as researcher, when we say something, society says, okay, so and so has shown by research. That means they believe that what we are saying is honest and true. And that's what we have an obligation to society, that we must honor the trust that they place on us. We must have obligation to oneself to not violate scientific values and ethics. We must be accountable to society, since research is mostly funded by public money. And we have general obligation to act in ways that serve the humanity. Now, dissemination of new knowledge is what becomes an important point, because research is the honor of new knowledge. We have created, we have obtained that new information, new finding, and the new knowledge needs to be shared with others. One, for self-satisfaction. हमें बड़ी खुशी होती है कि हमने ये डिस्कवरी की, लोगों को बताएं, तो एक self-satisfaction है. But equally important is as a social responsibility, because what we have learned, we must share with our society so that everybody can benefit. And thirdly, it's to be shared with others for application and wealth generation. Only when we translate it into research into industry or some product, then it generates wealth. So all three become important in different contexts. In academic domain, research publications are the major mode of dissemination of the new research output. For our academic purpose, research publication becomes the major way of that we communicate. And that's what is the destiny of a scientist, and one can say researcher in any area, to know, to discover, and to publish. Now, what kind of articles we publish in typical research in current times? What kind of articles we can publish? They can be either in category of original research, and original research can be either as a full paper, the most common one, or as a short communication when it has a very small component that you want to communicate. Many journals publish these short communication or brief reports. Then it can be review articles where you are not doing actual research, but you are collecting information available in the various publications on a given theme into a critical manner. It's not just compilation of information. It is integrating the diverse information and giving a kind of summary of what is known, what is not known, or what needs to be known, Or if something is wrong in some of the publication, that also review articles are supposed to bring out. Then some journals publish letters to editors on something that has been published earlier or some related topic. One can write to the editor in context of a published paper in that journal or somewhere else, and these can be taken as letters to editors. Then there can be perspectives, commentaries, and opinion pieces that not all journals publish this, some journals publish this, and this can be useful. Then can be conference reports. Some important conferences are held, so somebody can write a report on what were the major kinds of presentation made, what were the major outcome from that, what we learned. So some journals publish conference reports as well. There can be book reviews, new books that are published online or hard copy. Many journals also publish reviews on books that are published in their given domain that they are concerned with. A full research paper, there's a typical structure for a full research paper. When you submit a manuscript, we are supposed to provide a cover page that should provide title of the article, all the names of all the authors in the order in which they are supposed to be placed, address of authors. We are supposed to provide a running title. That's a short title that comes along the different pages of the article. Then we need to provide keywords. In addition, we've been required to provide when it comes to address the email or telephone numbers and so on and so forth. That depends on individual journal, but these are the most basic component that cover page is to have. Then there has to be an abstract, which different journals have different word limits. It can vary from 150 to 250 words typically. This should provide the major summary, the kind of background, kind of how you did, what you did, and what is the outcome. Some journals put this abstract under different categories, like they may want you to write few lines as a background, some lines as methods, some lines as results, and some lines as important findings and future out. So concern that can happen. So this abstract format depends on individual journal, how they want it. Then a typical research paper will have an introduction where you provide the background information about what research has been done, what is known in brief, and what are the lacunae that are existing, and how we address those lacunae, and what has been your main finding. That comes in an introduction. Then there is a material method section where you describe what materials you have used, what methods you have used. These are to be described. Then there is a section on results and observations where you describe what you have observed, the data, the images, or whatever survey results that are there. They all come under this section. And then there is a section on discussion that discusses the present results, observations, in context of what is already known. That's why it's called discussion. Some papers have results and discussion combined together depending upon the length and the context that can happen. These can be combined, but they can be kept separate. And then there is a section on acknowledgements, whom you want to thank for support or fund, or somebody who helped in providing materials, or somebody helped in providing certain corrections to the text and so on. These are acknowledgements that go on. And then there's a list of references. Each journal has its own pattern, and each good journal provides author guidelines, which must be read before the manuscript is prepared and submitted. Because if it is not prepared according to the guideline that a given journal is, the manuscript may be simply returned by the editor without considering, or you may have to revise, and that delays publication. So it's always good to read the guidelines for authors and then prepare the manuscript accordingly, because references are also to be cited and arranged in the list in a specific pattern, which varies from journal to journal. So it's always good to follow these guidelines. Now, authorship is the major component as to who can be an author. And this has been defined by an international organization, a kind of voluntary organization called the Committee on Publication Ethics. This is not a governmental body. It's again editors and authors and researchers came together and decided that they should have this committee, and they should define who can be an author, what can be the general consideration. And this is freely accessible site which anybody and everybody should read who are doing research. The COPE site should be understood by everyone. Now, it defines an author contributes in at least one or more of the following: conception or design of the work, acquisition, analysis, and/or interpretation of data generated, collected during the work. It can be small amount, it can be full amount, or it can be half amount. Accordingly, you can have more than one authors, depending on how many people who have done this part. Then drafting, editing the work, or revising it critically, and thus contributing intellectually to important content. All of them are authorized to be considered as authors. And what is also important in a good publication is that each author's contributions are defined. Who has done what? If it's a multi-author paper, who conceived the idea, who designed the work, who acquired the data. These should be clearly defined with name that this and this persons are involved in this. More than one person, all of them can be involved in every work, or some may be involved in writing, somebody may be involved in acquisition. So this has to be defined very clearly. Currently, authorship are mostly multi-author paper. There are very few single-author paper where one person has done everything. Now, in multi-author paper, order of authorship can reflect relative contributions, and there are certain names given, certain designations given to different authors. I'll come to that later. One of more authors typically is identified the first author, who are, and the others as corresponding author, and one or more as corresponding author, and others, if they are still there, they can be co-authors without either being called first author or corresponding author. There are some work where there may be hundreds of authors. So they may have their own convention that they list all the authors alphabetically by surname. And that's it. And there, the order of author doesn't mean who has contributed more or less. And this order has to be a joint decision of co-authors. So it's not that one person takes the decision. Everybody must agree to this order. The corresponding author takes the primary responsibility for communication with the journal during the manuscript submission, peer review, and publication process, and also ensures the journal's administrative requirements like providing details of authorship, ethics committee approvals, documentation related to clinical trials, collecting information on conflict of interest. All these remain corresponding author's responsibility. And corresponding author remains responsible even after paper is published for any query, any request that is generated in relation to that publication. The corresponding author is supposed to respond to that. And now it's not necessary that the corresponding author name comes first or last, or it can be anywhere in the order as collectively agreed upon. First author is the one, or there may be more than one, who have carried out bulk of the primary work that form the basis of the article to be published. In our current practice, generally, is the PhD students, if they are authors, that they become first authors, and others become co-authors and corresponding author. But there is no hard and fast rule about it. It depends upon who has contributed more to the actual work that is being reported. Now, there are guest authorship, which are based exclusively on expectation that the inclusion of someone who made no useful contribution would improve, that somebody has not contributed anything, but we still include their name, that it can improve the chances of work being accepted or publication, or it can boost everyone's academic performance index score. This is unethical. And as I said, only those who have actually contributed to the work become authors. Their honorary or gift authorship, for example, the head of the department, or the dean or director of the institute, principal of the college, or director of an institute, they are just made authors because they are senior most. That's again unethical. They are not, unless they have contributed. Simply by providing facility, they are not contributed. Providing facility, their requirement is their basic duty. But if they have contributed that particular work in an intellectual manner, then yeah, their names are necessary. Otherwise, there is no point there. These are unethical authorship. Then surrogate authorship, that somebody else writes and you put your name. That's again completely unethical. And most of the plagiarized papers or papers with the fabricated data or predictive journals, they come to this category that the person not able to write a paper, ask someone to write a paper, make something, and then submit with your name. That this is absolutely unethical. Ghost authorship, that somebody has actually participated, but that person's name is excluded for one reason or another. This is unethical. Anybody who has contributed to a study, name must be there. Removing that name, either while filing a patent or submitting a manuscript, is unethical. Now, there can be another different class of ghost authorship which is not unethical. See, today what happens is very often we are not able to write good English, or we are not able to communicate ourselves very well in English, and there are commercial agencies who help you to write that paper for a certain fee. Or some of your friends may help in improving the manuscript. Their name may not be given, but they may be acknowledged. So they can be ghost authors, that they contributed, but their names are not there. But those who contributed and their names are not there, that's unethical. But those who contributed in improving the language or something, and they don't want to be authors, but they are acknowledged, that's ethical. And as I said, anonymous authorship in research publications is not accepted. In literature, we have certain names assumed by some people, and they get to know, but that becomes their name. But just to write XYZ as your author is not permitted. Now, there is another consideration that we must look at it, that in a student's thesis, who can be an author? Typically, student and supervisor should both be author because both have contributed. But sometimes it may so happen that supervisor can decide not to include one's own name. A student can publish without supervisor's name, but this has to be mutually agreed. But supervisor must not publish doctoral work of a student without the student's name. The student has gone away, the data remains unpublished, and I publish under my own name. That's unethical. If I publish, it must have student's permission and student's name together. Another thing which is unethical is multiple authors on research publication emanating essentially from the work of one student thesis. The whole work is in one thesis, and there are multiple authors. Then there's a question how it can be, because that thesis is a certificate is given by supervisor and student, but the entire work is by that student. Why should there be multiple authors? It can sometimes happen that the thesis work is related to some other work which is published together, and maybe that can also be included in thesis. But if that inclusion happens, then thesis must clearly state whose work is included there to support the data. That must be very clearly stated in thesis also. Then only multiple authors on a thesis work can be justified. Otherwise, no. There are conventions of publications that are ethical. One is no multiple submissions. We submit a manuscript at one time to only one journal. Till that journal takes a decision or we withdraw that manuscript from that journal, we cannot submit it elsewhere. And that's what we mean by that no multiple submissions are allowed. We cannot publish same thing more than once. Same set of data cannot be published. Once it is published, it cannot be published again, except sometimes you may want to use data in a published paper in a review article. If one does that, then permission must be obtained from the authors, from the publishers, that this can be reused or reproduced in that review. When you want to reproduce some data or images from some published paper, that is possible. But you can't publish same set of data with your own name twice, or somebody else's data with your name twice. That is wrong, unethical. Sometimes some journals want us to suggest potential reviewers, but these reviewers we must suggest purely on academic consideration rather than that so-and-so is my friend and therefore will help my publication, because that's what becomes conflict of interest, that somebody becomes partial. So that must not happen. If we have to make if we discover some error at a later stage, it is ethically required that we make that correction. We should publish that yes, there was an error and this is to be corrected, and that should go on. So this is again ethical convention, that we correct an error so that people who read it later on do not remain under wrong impression. Very often we describe new material or new kind of something that has come out. Typically, it is our responsibility to share the new material with anybody who is interested in that. Once it is published, then the material or the data become public domain, and that should be provided unless it is a patented item. Then we may not. But if it is not a patented item, then we are supposed to share the material with others. A paper to be withdrawn or retracted if it is wrong, there has been some misbehavior or misdeed in publishing, then paper has to be withdrawn with retraction, and this is required on part of authors, on part of editors and publishers. Now, a major consideration comes is plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Basically, plagiarism means using others' work without providing proper credit. That somebody's idea, somebody's text, I just use in my own writing without giving credit to the original source. That's what plagiarism means. So plagiarism can be text plagiarism, plagiarism can be idea plagiarism. We can copy a figure, we can copy data, we can copy text. That this is textual plagiarism. But somebody has given an idea, and we use that idea without giving credit to that person who gave that idea originally, is what we call as idea plagiarism. And plagiarism in academic writing involves using words, ideas, or information obtained from some other source, but reported as one's own without giving appropriate credit to the source. This is why it becomes unethical, because it's an academic dishonesty, equivalent to theft of intellectual creativity. See, anybody who has found out something is what we call as intellectual property. And the person who has found out that thing is that property belongs to him or her. And if we use it without giving that credit, then that's what is called theft or academic dishonesty. How do we avoid text plagiarism? Because when we write something, we want to use someone else's, what somebody else has stated. Very often we have to write that way. So how do we avoid text plagiarism? First thing, do not copy and paste. Just because things are available online, on the net, you just copy and paste and make your own. No. You may modify the language or paraphrase it to convey the meaning, but you must cite the original source from where you have taken this idea. You cannot just forget this original source and put it as your own, paraphrase it and put it as yours. That will still be counted as plagiarism. For example, changing some words but copying the sentence structure of a source without giving credit is plagiarism, and this can be detected. Somebody can find it out. Now there are software that can find it out, whether it's only changing some words or paraphrasing, and they can flag it out that, okay, this can also be considered plagiarism. If it is necessary to reproduce the exact language from the source, place quoted sentences within inverted quotes and cite the source for credit. This must be done, that you place whatever you are reproducing exact text within quotes, and then give the reference that from where this has come out. Then it will not consider as plagiarism. But you can't write the whole para or whole introduction or its section by quoting someone else and putting everything in within the inverted quote. It must be in your own language. Then there is what we call intellectual property. Is any creative output of a person's mind. It can be a music, it can be a poetry, it can be a novel, it can be a painting, it can be a sculpture, it can be research output, anything, a machine, whatever it is intellectual property, depending upon the domain that one is working in. And then, therefore, there is intellectual property. Just as we right for a property, a physical property, we have property rights for intellectual. Usually give the creator an exclusive right over the use of his or her creation, unless that person has shared the rights with others. And I will come to that there can be different ways of sharing. But if it's in patent, then money is involved, and then that can be shared only with the legal provision that exists for patent rules. That's what industrial intellectual property right, which are obtained through patents. The exclusive right is usually for a certain period of time, but for research publication, the right of author is perpetual. When there is a patent, it has a certain validity, 15 years, 20 years, depending upon different kinds of patent, different country rules. But for research publication, author's patent is perpetual. Well, when the author passes away, then of course it becomes more general, but publishers may still have patent rights, so if they persist. So this has to be looked at in individual cases. And this is what now in research publication, they have become a general term, Creative Commons licenses. They have defined what kind of licenses are provided to a published material. They are abbreviated by these. That means there's no copyright involved. It's public domain information. Anybody can use it, and without even citing who gave this information. Then there are Creative Commons, BY, the BYSA. These details can be seen, and the tick marks say which are required to be done, in which kind of licenses, that you can copy and publish, but you need to attribute whom do you, from where you have copied, and you can publish. Then some are permitted for commercial use, some licenses do not allow commercial use. Some licenses allow you to modify and adapt, other licenses do not allow you to modify. So depending upon these combinations, one can classify that my article is under CC by SA license, or it's by CC BY ND license. So these are defined, and these are good journals always ask the authors to define, or they have their policy that what they publish comes under which category of license. Now, there are good research practices which we are required to follow as part of our ethical behavior. One is like maintenance of lab record. Raw data must be maintained, must be available for anybody to inspect at a later stage also. And this lab record has to be maintained on a daily basis, especially in experimental studies or even surveys, that on which day what you did and what was done. Then collaboration authorship requires mutual respect, understanding and agreement, that if two people are collaborating, if they are joint authors, then they must have mutual respect, good understanding and agreement. We do not do any idea or text plagiarism. That, as I said, this is not part of the unethical research practice. We must unbiasedly record all observations. Not that I like some observations because they fit in my habit, therefore these are recorded, others are ignored. No. Whatever observations you make, you record them and then analyze whether these certain observations were because of something going wrong or something else happening which you didn't expect, and they become very important. We have to adhere to all safety and ethical guidelines. This is necessary. We must avoid duplicate publications and submissions because this is unethical. Trust is good. I mean, people believe in us that researchers are trustworthy, but we still need control to make sure that yes, the trust is placed with a proper justification. Then there can be research misconduct. If something is done unethically, that's what we call as research misconduct. The most important and most common in recent times is idea and text plagiarism, and that's why almost all journals, even in our own university system, in any thesis is supposed to be checked first for text plagiarism. Is the thesis copied from somewhere else, or a part of it is copied from somewhere else? Because this has become rampant, unfortunately, and there can be idea plagiarism, which experts only can find out whether idea is taken from someone or its original idea. But this is, if either of them have been practiced, then they are misconduct. There can be falsification and fabrication of data or images. With everything becoming online and with so many softwares available for statistical analysis, for data generation, for figure preparation, or the modification of images, that this has again become very common misconduct. And most journals, good journals, look at these carefully, and that's why very often when we submit manuscripts, the journal may ask us to also provide our daily record to make sure that the data that we are providing is actually what we have collected. So this is becoming very critical importance. If we must not violate any regulatory guidelines, whatever regulatory guidelines exist, we must follow that. Because if that's not done, then that's again considered research misconduct, and your observation may not be valid, may not be accepted. If we do not provide our data for third-party validation, if we say we don't provide data, then it's again misconduct. Very often today, when we have large genomic data, large proteomic data, or large data sets, there are international platforms where the data have to be deposited and have to be made available to anybody who may want to validate it. And there are different conditions for this, for the use of these repositories or databases. If we make inappropriate authorship, we exclude somebody or we include somebody who doesn't deserve, then that can also be taken as research misconduct. Sometimes it may so happen that we may not, our data do not agree with previous results. This can be a novelty, which is important. But if we just create data which will not confirm with previous results, and so that I can claim something new, call as fraud. So non-confirmation can be either a novelty or it can be a fraud. And if it's fraud, it's obviously misconduct. But if it's a novelty, then yes, it makes a great advance. What happens if you do misconduct? First and most important thing is we have exploited trust of society. Other researchers and society that place trust on researchers, we are making wrong use of it. And that's why it's unethical in the first place. We are going to have a cascading effect with our subsequent researchers if they rely on wrong data, wrong interpretation, given deliberately by some researchers, then they will follow the wrong path. And that will have cascading effect till they discover that this was something wrong. Some years will pass by, so much of manpower, man hours have been wasted, and therefore that's bad. This can invite editorial and other actions when misconduct is reported and established. And what are these actions that can happen? If let's say paper is published and few years later or few months later, author discovered that there was some error, either in reporting, on data collection, or interpretation something, the best thing is authors can correct it by themselves. They can write to the editor and they can publish a correction. And all journals, good journals, agree to this correction by authors. If authors are not corrected and editors, it has come to the notice of editors, and if it's a small and uncertain unethical action, then editors may write a note that we have a concern about this data. And that's what is known as expression of concern. That editors put a note in one of the issues of their journal that this paper was published, but editors have some concern on the validity of the data. Therefore, people who are going to make use of the data in their own research should be careful. But if the error is more serious and established, then editors can retract or withdraw the paper, which can be editor can withdraw, or better it is if authors themselves withdraw that this was wrong. And that's published in a given journal that this paper now stands withdrawn. That means nobody should cite that paper, nobody should make use of that paper's data. Then the next thing that the editors can do is they can report to funding agencies and host institutions from where that work came in and who supported that. And this can then invite more serious legal actions and disciplinary actions depending upon the funding agency's rules and depending upon the host institution's rules. And of course, that's where disciplinary action comes in. But I think the worst is the stigma that goes with it. Because once your name is associated with the misconduct, it's very difficult to erase that stigma. And therefore, one has to be very careful while preparing a manuscript, while submitting a manuscript or publishing a manuscript, to make sure that there's been no misconduct involved, deliberate or inadvertent. If inadvertent, one can always make a correction and one can make a statement. But if deliberate, then stigma becomes very important and very critical. Then it becomes difficult to, and mind it, responsibility of misconduct comes on all authors, not just one author, not on the first author or not on the last author, not on it is responsibility of all the authors for that misconduct. Now, how do we improve quality of research and innovations? One we must remember is quality research requires passion, not fashion or compulsion. We don't do research because our institution wants us to do research. We do research because we're in a profession where research helps our profession, and therefore one has passion to find out something new, whatever discipline one is working in. And major advance occurs when results do not agree with the expected. Remember this, especially in scientific experimental research. If we find something that doesn't that doesn't agree with what is expected, then only a major advance. If our results only confirm what has been shown, we are not making any advance. And so one has to strive to get results that differ from what is expected. And that's where people say that out-of-the-box ideas, often originate from common sense, can be very exciting. We don't need always very great facilities. We need common sense, most importantly, to think, to analyze, to understand what we are finding. And then there are research journals where we publish. The need to share the new knowledge has generated this publication of scholarly journals by academic institutions, society. This is historical. That earlier all journals were published by a university or an institute or an academic society. And so research publication are the major mode of dissemination of new research output. We are required to publish in research journal. But as there's greater demand for scholarly publications, it attracted commercial publishers who now take the major share in scholarly publications. Academic institutions, journals are also now more and more associated with commercial publishers. Commercial interests have positive effect. They have improved the quality, improved the services, but then they have some very negative consequences, few of which I'll talk about in the coming time. And one is the predictive journal that I'm sure everybody has heard of this term because this has become very critical. A library in US, Bial, coined the term predatory journals for journals, that is, the journal is the predator, which have little or no peer review system and which are primarily focused on making money from the gullible authors with the prey. Because authors need to publish something, the rules require that the author has to publish. But author doesn't have good data, doesn't have something which can be published in a good journal. So these journals, they collect money from the author and publish something without any peer review, without any quality with assessment or something. And therefore, they publish anything for money, and that's what makes them predatory journal. But over the years, there's a lot of discussion, and in today's time, there's no uniformity decision as to what is to call predatory journal. There are multiple terms that come out, and therefore there is some confusion as to which journal we should call predatory journal. There are different names, like original name of course is predatory publications. Then there are pseudo journals that, despite being published by legitimate publisher, exist solely for marketing purposes. That they do not really demand much quality. They simply want money to publish something, and they are called as pseudo journals or bogus journals or poor journals. Then there are hijack journal, a journal which has a very good standing, but somebody illegally duplicated or hijacked their website or publish a counterfeit duplicate journal by same name. This is again something very serious. And once it gets to known, then of course the original journals have to take care that the website is removed and they do not publish in their name. And as this Venn diagram shows, different people call different names to this, but unfortunately there is no common list which covers all these names. Each one defines different categories, and there are different journals that fit in one category but do not fit in another category. And that is what has given rise to some confusion as to which journals we should consider for publication, which journals we should not consider. Now, what we can say, some general properties of predatory or poor or hijack journals are that they give misleading information or false information on the website or emails. They can give contradictory statements. They can give fake impact factors. They give incorrect address, or you may not have any idea where they are located. There is no geographical location known. There can be names on the editorial board of people who have no idea that they are also on that name. I mean, they are just placed some famous names, and somebody will think that, okay, so-and-so is member of the board. But this can be false claims of indexing or membership associations. So they provide this misleading information, and that's what makes one category that one has to be careful about. They do not follow the best editorial publication practices. There is no defined retraction policy. They claim copyright despite publishing as an open access, that anybody can read it. If anybody can read it, then there is no copyright. That means they do not know. They do not specify Creative Commons license, which I discussed earlier, that there are different kinds of licenses. They do not say under which category this paper is published or the journal is published. They do not have any transparency in how do they take an editorial decision, what fee they will charge, how the peer review is done, what's the contact information, and editors and editorial board members are not verifiable whether they are so, because their institutional affiliations are not provided. Typically, a good journal, the editors and editorial board members must be those who are associated or who are known in the academic circle and who are associated with an established institution. And the other thing is they keep on sending emails to anybody and everybody to invite publications. And I'm sure anybody who has published some paper keeps on getting email from very unrelated disciplines where they send an email that, okay, we want your manuscript so that we can publish within this week or this month. These are aggressive solicitation, and they must be uh, very carefully dealt with and should be marked as spam, so that others do not keep on getting them. Their general quality is poor, and their whole purpose in publication is to deceive others, to collect money, and which is their prime objectives. Now, unfortunately, we have predatory conferences also. They have become very common, especially this online time. Many conferences are predatory that you collect registration fee, nothing is organized, and the organizer gets money, and the person who has registered gets a certificate without doing anything. And this is what we call a predatory conference, and this has become very common. And very soon, if one provides certificate at a conference, this can also come under a scanner whether it was a predatory conference or a genuine conference. Why predatory journals flourish? There are many articles. I have written several articles on this. That there is increasing commercialization because such publications become full industry. There's enormous profit that major publishers like Elsevier or Springer or Wiley, they make enormous profit because of such publication. And this is what has attracted lots of unscrupulous people to come and publish a journal so that they can make money. And the assessment, because when we are being assessed academically, either for appointment or promotion, or rules say you must have a certain minimum number of publication, not a certain minimum quality of published work. And this again has facilitated people to publish some journals so that you can give a number. I published 5 or 10 or 20. They may not have any quality. And the practice of paying open access charges, that the authors or institutions pay money to the publisher so that others can read it free. This is what we call as open access charges. And once this was practiced, any journal could now say, okay, I'll charge open access charges and you pay money and it gets published. So these have been some bad rules, bad practices, which facilitate predatory journals to flourish. And I maintain that open access charges are something which to me is a fraudulent activity because you just pay something and people will read it. That's not the right kind of academic practice. And that's what, as I said, official policy for assessment on quantity rather than quality is promoted these predatory journals. Now, unfortunately, many established journals which are only online, they charge very high article percent charges running in several thousands of dollars or euros. I would call them also predatory because only if you pay they will publish, otherwise they will not publish. Because their pay system may not be always be as rigorous as it should be. For them, money is very important. I mean, I have experience with some journals where I found the paper to be bogus, which is still published because the journal will lose money by if that paper is rejected. So I call them also kind of predatory. And this is again, some can see these articles are available on my ResearchGate page or my Google Scholar page, and they are free access. Anybody can read them. And this is something that I've written. Why pay open access charges? If you publish a paper and if journal doesn't allow it to be freely accessed, you can always share PDF file through email with anyone who is interested, and for which we doesn't need to pay any money. So I have written this article that do we need to spend substantial amounts? You see, in India itself, we have pay hundreds of crores of rupees every year for open access charges. I wish that money could be used for academic purposes in a better way. One thing that I think any research person should now practice is preprint archives. There are standard preprint archives available from abroad. In India also there is a talk of starting preprint archives. These are public repositories where a published paper or a paper manuscript is submitted. It is published without peer reviewing. It's called unpeer reviewed manuscript, but they are available for anybody to see them, anybody to get them. And when the paper actually gets published, standard preprint archive will link it with the published paper so that one can know that, okay, this is now published. And this has several advantages. One is your research work is easily accessible to everyone without having to pay any money, because one doesn't need to pay any money for preprint archive publication. And it also ensures against idea plagiarism, because sometimes what happens is we make some discovery, write a manuscript, it may take several months to sometimes even a year to publish it, and in between somebody can get to know your idea, the reviewers can get to know your idea, editor can get to know your idea, and they can publish something before you do, and therefore you stand loser. But if you are published in preprint archives, then you have a date stamp that on this day you have put this idea. So that's what it ensures against idea plagiarism. Because they claim for priority. And another important advantage is that one can have informed feedback. But like any social media, once you put it in a preprint archive, there is space for people who have read it to give their comments on it, whether they liked it or whether they think that something was missing, some evidence was not weak or something was good. You can make that use of that feedback in improving your studies for subsequent times. Unfortunately, we must be also careful of predictive preprint servers. You see, commercial interests can be very unethical, and there are preprint servers which say we will put in a preprint, but we charge money. Understand this: preprint archives do not charge any money. And any person sends you a message that we have a preprint server and you pay so much money, just don't talk to them, because they are predatory or bogus. And what can happen is your paper becomes available today online and it may disappear in 2 months because the website was wound up. But standard preprint archives are supposed to be eternal. These websites are supposed to remain available for all times to come. And therefore one has to be very careful about this. The last point that I would like to briefly discuss is that we need to promote good journals in India. We have unfortunate rules that say international journals, national journals. This is wrong. We must publish our research in a good journal, not in a predatory or bogus journal, but not necessarily national or international. I do not consider impact factor to be also a great criteria. It should be a journal which is read by people in my field of work, and I don't, of course, will publish in anywhere where there are charges to pay. It must be free. And as Siviraman believed, flourishing of quality journals in India is a must for our leadership. Unfortunately, because we haven't done this, we still remain not the leader in science, which we should have been otherwise. And so, I also draw attention to a book published by Indian National Science Academy, freely available from INSA website. This is a complete guide on various issues in ethics, in education, research, and governance. And this can be read without any cost. Anybody can download this and read it. So with that, I thank and conclude, and will be happy to answer any questions that may be required. I'm not able to hear the voice.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, I can stop sharing now. Yes, any questions?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for such a lucid presentation related to the ethics of manuscript writing and publishing research work. We are very much publishing our works, but still we were not very much familiar with all these issues that you have put up today in such a nice manner, in such a simple manner, and it has helped the participants to understand all the ethics related to manuscript writing, and also how to search for journals, how to publish their work, and what are the various points that they have to put up while publishing research. There are few questions which I want to put up. First question is how to identify and select a journal for publication. What should be the criteria for selection of journal when we need to publish our research?
Yes, that's an important point. What we should do is, first of all, identify which area we are working and who are the people who are likely to read that journal. See, that journal must have published previous articles in the area that we are working in, and therefore others are likely to read it. We should also make sure that the journal doesn't take unduly long time to publish, or doesn't publish something within a week or two, because if it's taking too long, then we may get stuck out with our manuscript. If it is publishing within a week or two, that means that journal is not a good quality journal. And so we should look at the history of their journal. We should make sure that it's not a peer-reviewed journal. It has a good, it will have good publication ethics, good guidelines to the authors. Then we publish in that journal. But I mean, I will not go for international journal or national journal, or a journal is a journal. As long as it has good publication practices and has a good circulation, good availability for others, that should be this place where we want to submit a manuscript.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you have raised a point related to quantitative publication, which is a need for promotion. And this is a very big problem for the teachers who are working in colleges, because most of the colleges, they don't provide so much of platform for good research. And if it's science, definitely we need some kind of grants for doing some kind of research. Even if we are trying to bring the grants, we are so much loaded with the classroom teaching, and besides classroom teaching, there are certain other activities going on in the college. We have to get accreditation from the NAC and some other kind of activities going on. It really becomes very difficult to have a quantitative as well as qualitative publication. So how the college teachers should manage their work platform to do justice to the teaching part as well as to the research aspect, and then to have a good number of publication in good quality journals. So most of the teachers wants a kind of highlighted thing from you, that how to move ahead with this problem.
Yes, this is a very complex situation. See, the rules are made because we don't do anything. So to stimulate that we need to do something, you see, research is an integral part of higher education, and we are supposed to be party to this. And because we don't do this, those rules have been made to force people, teachers, to indulge in research, to practice research. See, now doing it by force again can be wrong, and that's what has happened. But I won't say that okay, this shouldn't be considered at all. That's again wrong. It has to be considered, because research is something that higher education teachers must involve, because only when they create new knowledge, new understanding, they understand things better and they can communicate to the students in a better way. So research has to happen. And to me, research is a non-life work. Research is something that one lives, one's brain remains engaged 24 hours of the day. And so time may not be the major constraint for research. Facilities are, yes. That was one of the reasons why, like you see, the Star Scholar scheme was part of this, was that facilities are improved, which can be used not only for teaching but also for research. There are research projects available to college teachers also. I fully agree that yes, facilities are not there, but this is again responsibility also of the college management to provide certain minimal basic facilities, to make sure that they have adequate number of staff, so that the load on per teacher doesn't become unusually high, because that also makes the teaching suffer. So it's a not just one-way solution. It requires a holistic understanding, and I hope our policymakers really understand this.
So, thank you, sir. One more question is, we are taking the research and we are writing the thesis, and then our students are also writing their thesis. Now, in some of the universities like Purvanchal University or Kashi Vidyapith, they publish the entire thesis on Shodh Ganga. The entire thesis is being published on Shodh Ganga, and it is like an open access for the entire scientific community. Even though we have not been able to publish those work, maybe a part of those thesis, a part of that thesis has been published, but not fully it has been published. There are several chapters which are still left unpublished, but it is showing fully, our data is being shown fully through Shodh Ganga to the entire community. So how can this be governed? Because now when we are trying to publish the same work, I think it is taking as a case of plagiarism also.
No,
So that is also, no?
No, it is. If the thesis with the name is published on official platform like Shodh Ganga,
Okay.
then it is not plagiarism. If the authors are same, if authors become different, then yes,
Okay.
it can be plagiarism. But if same student, same supervisor publishing it later on, it's not plagiarism.
Okay.
This must be understood. See, very often we even as I said, preprint archive already published it. People have seen it.
Yeah.
Then you submit it to a journal. The line checker will show that this kind of data, this set of data is already available there. But then editor knows that these are preprint archives, and therefore that's not taken as plagiarism. This is very clear. Shodh Ganga in a way is good availability, because then everything may not be always published. Certainly the data is available. Unfortunate part of the Shodh Ganga that can happen is people copy the data and make their own pieces.
Yes, that was the second point I wanted to raise.
But
Yeah.
that is plagiarism. And
Yeah.
that is why now a requirement is that every thesis before submission has to be checked against available material. And there it will check up that, okay, this is already published. And so that will, but I personally would want that, yes, preprint archive or Shodh Ganga, anything, data should be available to the world. Yes. But publication of same data by same set of authors is certainly not plagiarism. But you publish in a formal journal and then you publish it again, then that's plagiarism.
Thank you, sir. Another question is that there is a lot of problem due to the UGC care list. Some of the journals are included in it, and then they automatically exclude those journals. And again, a new list is created. And when the promotions of teachers are to be, they have already published some time back, and it was listed in the UGC care list, but now it is not there. So this is creating panic in the teachers community. So how can we come out of it? Because people are so much stressed about it that now my journal, I was like I had published in a careless journal, and now it is not showing there. So this is the biggest problem.
I do not know what the absolute stand of it is, but what
Yeah.
I would say is that when it was published, if that at that time it was in care list, it should not be considered to be deleted from that your published list. This should be very clear that at the time when the publication was made, if the journal or the submission was made, if the journal was in care list, it should be considered as a publication. See, the care list has to be dynamic. I mean, I will discuss, although I'm not involved directly with it, but what I understand is it is a dynamic list. People can add it, people can point it out that this is a bad journal. See, partly this list is made by, the academicians who are underlying this whole mess. That we work for our own selfish interest, say this journal should be included because they're publishing it, and that's a poor journal. So somebody says this is a poor journal. But what was the UGC I understand has given is each institution can define what journal it will consider as a valid journal. Care list is only guideline. It's not the mandatory list only that is to consider. If a given institution says we consider this journal, or even though it's not on care list, it's a valid journal, that institution can make a resolution, can take it accordingly. But yes, it is true that some journals, you see, even some journals that are in Scopus or Web of Knowledge list are also predatory. And so once it is pointed out, they can go out of those lists, they can go out of UGC care list. So any of these lists have to be kind of dynamic. And it's the administration which has to take an academic view of the whole thing. And the experts should find out what was published was just a number, one more paper, or it has some quality.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Anu from Department of Chemistry wants to ask a question. He has done his PhD from Pune, and he will let us know about himself also. So you can go ahead, Dr. Anu.
Good morning, sir. So good afternoon, sir. First of all, thank you for blessing us with such a informative, such a valuable information. Myself, Dr. Anup Singh, and I want to ask a question that I have some data with me, but that is neither part of my thesis nor produced in my lab. But I helped a student in producing those data with permission of his or her mentor. Okay, so now question is that whether I'm eligible to publish that data if his mentor don't want him to let it publish.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. This work, you have some data because you work with someone else as well, with some other student or some other mentor. Then you can publish it only with their consent. You cannot publish it independently because this is not your independent data. This data you collected while discussing with someone, you or working with someone, or somebody else was involved and mentored, some teacher was faculty was involved in that. So it has to be published only in consultation with them. If they say, okay, that this is your independent data, you have done it, and they give you formal permission that you can publish in your name, you can. But without informing them, if you publish, it can be unethical.
Means if I want to introduce student name in that, but his mentor don't want to publish, but
So
since I
controls
have
has to
analyzed,
agree. Controls has to agree.
yes, yes. Oh,
You see, if mentor doesn't agree, the
hmm.
point is how independent work was data was generated independent of the mentor. See, sometimes I can tell you, I was a practice of this with my students. What I've done is sometimes that they had some observation which I wanted more confirmation, more definition, but the student wanted to publish. Then I said, all right, it's your responsibility. I'm not an author. Although this may have been work has been done in my lab, but I don't want to be an author unless I'm convinced. So in this case, if that mentor says, okay, I'm not convinced of data, you want to publish in your name, don't include my name, then you can. But without that kind of clear understanding, you publish it, then that person can blame you that you have done something unethical.
Yes, sir. That's
Thank
what.
you. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Ashwini Kumar Nigam wants to ask a question. He is right now presently working as assistant professor in the Department of Zoology, Uday Pratap College. And he is your student also. So he is very much blessed and he wants to ask.
Madam, sir. Sir, there is query regarding, sir, relationship of the impact factor with the quality of journal, because there are different journals which are not having good impact factor, but still they are peer reviewed, good international or national journal. Then how do we select, sir, and on which criteria, sir? If you could, sir.
See, this is a very complicated question. Most of funding agencies assessment, they take impact factor as a quantitative measurement, and which I have been holding always is wrong. Actually, that's what from Indian National Science Academy, when we publish a guideline how to assess an individual, we make sure that impact factor is not the major consideration. It's not that it's no consideration, but it cannot be just the arithmetic number adds up and therefore one is better researcher than others. If that were so, I'm very poor researcher because impact factor of my publications is not very high. But for me, what is important is quality rather than quantity. What is the real impact of your finding? And this can be published in XYZ journal, because you see, we must remember what is impact factor. Impact factor is n number of papers published in 2 years, and in those 2 years, how many times that journal paper was cited. Now, a given journal may have, let's say, impact factor of 20. That means, on an average, an article in that journal is cited 20 times. But some papers in the same journal may not be cited any time. Some papers are cited 100 times. So it's the average that comes in. So that doesn't mean that just by publishing that journal, your paper order becomes very high. Papers, in fact, the fact is, higher the impact factor, generally greater the chance of retraction. Because in the lure of publishing something, people make fancy data, try to deceive, and so that's again a bad side of it. So in my personal view, impact factor is not an important point. But I agree that in the official system, although theoretically everybody agrees, even our Indian agencies have agreed that impact factor is not the main point. But unfortunately, they keep on asking for impact factor. When I have to submit my list of publications, I never give impact factor. So that's
I think, sir, there should be importance of citation index in Indian scenario also, sir, because
citation index is again, you see, none of them are absolutely clear-cut evidence. Citation index can again depend upon what's the area of work that you are doing.
Yes.
For example, if you are working on, let's say, an animal which is available only in a small area in a given country, you publish something very great. How many people will cite it? Because nobody is working in that area. So citation becomes very low, but that does not always mean that quality is bad. So you see, citation index also has to be understood. None of them can be just standalone criteria.
Okay, sir. One more query regarding, sir, how do we identify different types of predatory and fishing, or so many journals that you have just explained? What are the criteria, sir?
There's no clear-cut definition. We need to look at various properties. What kind of articles are published in that journal? If they are published too quickly that the date of submission is today and it's published 3 days or 1 month later, there is some problem. But no reviewer is sitting idle that you give me a manuscript today and I give you my review comment and the day after tomorrow you publish it. No, that is another. What were the editors? Are their geographical locations known? Where are they? Because theoretically, editors should be one who has published something in that journal discipline.
Yes.
Journal is called interdisciplinary and international. If we take some in that term, I'll begin to worry. Are they real good journals or they are predatory?
Yes, because, sir, there is no list like that journal is predatory and that journal is pseudo journal and like fake.
That's why when you submit a journal, look at the website, find out the information, find out the instructions, find out the quality of papers that are published, then decide.
Means only by just judging ourselves about the quality of published articles, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a lucid information that you have given to us today regarding the ethics of manuscript writing, as well as how to move ahead with our own research and how to look for journals, how to search journal, a quality journal, and how to demarcate between the pseudo journals or the predatory journals. And this is definitely going to be a very useful platform which will be there. This recorded video will be there for the scientific community, and I'm extremely thankful to you today for joining with us and enlightening us with your kind of the work you have been doing and the knowledge that you have in all sorts of fields related to science and communication. So today, definitely the people from our college as well as the other participants who have joined from so many different states, they will be benefited from you. And I am once again thanking you for your joining with us and your connections and communication. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure also. Thanks. All the best.
Blessing, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
So now there are a few more announcements regarding the next session. So I would like to call Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh to announce for the next session, and we'll be ending this session. So please, Dr. Sanjeev Singh.
थैंक यू डॉक्टर तुमुल। जैसा कि शुरू में ही बताया गया था कि हमारा ये वर्कशॉप 3 सेशन में डिवाइडेड है। 2 सेशन हो चुका। पहला सेशन था डॉक्टर धीरज नायक का रोल ऑफ फैकल्टी इन मीनिंगफुल रिसर्च फॉर यूजी एंड पीजी टीचिंग। दूसरा सेशन अभी समाप्त हुआ। बहुत ही इंफॉर्मेटिव सेशन था, खासकर एकेडमिशियंस के लिए। प्रोफेसर एससी लखोटिया सर का एथिक्स ऑफ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट राइटिंग पर। और तीसरा सेशन अब 2 बजे से स्टार्ट होगा, जो कि प्रोस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी एंड ट्रांसडिसिप्लिनरी रिसर्च पर होगा, और उसके रिसोर्स पर्सन होंगे प्रोफेसर भारतेंदु कुमार सिंह। सो अभी लंच ब्रेक होगा और 2 बजे फिर नेक्स्ट सेशन के साथ हम लोग फिर मिलते हैं। तब तक साइन ऑफ कर सकते हैं डॉक्टर तुमुल।
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. So we'll be meeting once again at 2 p.m. The link has already been shared to the various groups and emailed to the participants. So please connect through the second link that has been provided to you all at 2 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.